Chapter 933. The treasures sealed in the planar battlefield belonged to the category of equipment and treasures. They would transmit a memory that taught the holder how to use them and what effects they had. Jun Changshao also received the memory when he controlled the ancient warship. From it, he learned that it wasn't used to cross the sea, but to fly. It wasn't a spaceship. How could it fly? The world of martial arts is full of wonders, the system said. The host should treat it with a normal heart. That's true. Jun Changshao wandered around a few more times. After confirming that there were no more treasures, he took away the stone platform that seemed to be made of some kind of special mineral. If it weren't for the fact that he still needed to support the 8 pillars, he might have taken it with him. After taking away the treasures in the stone room, Jun Changshao didn't linger and left. His soul form was playing with the pocket-sized ancient warship in his spatial ring. From its appearance, it looked like an ancient ship. It was made of wood and had 2 masts, 1 main and 1 auxiliary. There were sails of different sizes and ropes for retracting. There was also a very inconspicuous diagram in the cabin that looked like a formation. Jun Changshao asked in surprise, could it be that it's driven by a spirit array? If that was the case, it made sense. Without the support of formations in the world of martial arts, he found it hard to believe that a normal ship could fly in the sky. For example, the various firearms that could be bought from the shop wouldn't be a threat in the falling star continent where any martial master could catch bullets with their bare hands. If they weren't modified and made of crystal cores, they wouldn't be a threat. Whoosh! Whoosh! In the sky above the swamp, streaks of light came from afar. There were about 20 of them, 15 of which were Xian and 5 of which were Earth. These people were from the Tualuo continent. After learning that Elder He had been killed and that the treasures might have been stolen, they hurried over. As a second-tier plane, their overall strength wasn't as strong as the 9 Heavens continent, but they were still a force to be reckoned with in the planar battlefield. Soon, they stopped at the burning area and saw Elder He's corpse lying in the swamp. Their eyes were filled with anger. You killed someone from the Tualuo continent. Even if you're the king of heaven, you must die today. The leading old man said coldly. Chui Lao. Someone next to him said solemnly, I'm afraid only the first-tier planes would dare to kill our people in the planar battlefield. Everyone's expressions changed slightly. If it was really killed by a first-tier plane, then it would be a little tricky. The corner of Chui Lao's mouth twitched slightly as he said, even if you're in the first echelon, you still have to seek an explanation. Although his voice was as angry as ever, it was clear from his tone that he was a little scared. For a second-tier plane like the Tualuo continent, bullying a third-tier plane or lower was no problem at all. However, they were powerless against a first-tier plane. TSK, a middle-aged man sneered, the first echelon is nothing special. For example, the 9 Heavens continent was defeated by a newly ascended plane some time ago. Elder Song, are you talking about the falling star continent? Not bad. This old man has also heard of this plane. Don't judge it by its low level. There are quite a few experts there. The 9 Heavens continent Ci Mei, Furious Eyes, and 9 Stars Elder have all been captured. The one overseeing the falling star continent is a sect called the strongest sect of all ages. The patriarch is Jun Changshao, and he's only in his early 20s. It's strange. It's clearly not the time for the planes to enter the battlefield. How did this plane come in? Also, I heard that there aren't many of them, only about 10 to 20. The 9 Heavens continent is a first-tier plane, after all. Yet, it was defeated by a newly ascended plane. In this old man's opinion, our Tualuo continent can definitely replace it. A chef who didn't want to be a general wasn't a good tailor. As a second-tier plane, they naturally wanted to be in the first echelon. Elderly, Chui Lao said, you were there when the opportunity appeared. Did you see the falling star continent's martial artists? I did. Elderly, who had been silent all this while, had a hint of fear in his eyes. Among the 20 people, he was the only one who had personally experienced the falling star continent's martial artists' frenzied massacre. Although many days had passed, he still shuddered every time he thought about it. Fortunately, he saw that the situation wasn't good and retreated early. Otherwise, he would have been dead. This kind of expert, who was comparable to Wu Sheng in the Falling Star continent, was traumatized by Jun Changxiao's unstoppable massacre. Cui Lao said, he killed tens of thousands of people in a short time and was punished by the upper realm's lightning punishment. This Falling Star continent isn't simple. We can't let our guard down. Elder Song, who was still a little smug, shut his mouth. He could brag as much as he wanted. However, the Falling Star continent's Jun Changxiao, who held a huge sword and went on a frenzied massacre, was definitely capable. He had to be taken seriously. Fortunately, we didn't provoke this plane. The Nine Heavens continent suffered a great loss, but they didn't do anything. Perhaps, they also realized that the Falling Star continent isn't simple. I knew it. The first-tier plane can't be so cowardly. It turns out that they already knew something was wrong. Swish! Just as everyone was discussing, a stream of light flew out at extreme speed. Jun Changxiao stopped in midair and saw a group of people outside. He smiled and said, "Are you here for revenge?" The Tualuo continent's martial artists also noticed him. Cui Lao. Elder Song said angrily, judging from his attire and age, he must be the one who killed Elder He. Is he the Elder He you're talking about? Jun Changxiao pointed at the corpse below and said, if so, then yes, I killed him. The Tualuo continent's martial artists were furious. This kind of killing and admitting it with a face full of pride, he didn't take them seriously at all. The Earth powerhouse called Elder Li frowned and said to himself, his voice is a little familiar. Could it be, I'm in a hurry? Jun Changxiao took out a mask and put it on his face. He said, if you want to fight, then hurry up and kill me. Last time, he killed many people for the opportunity, but it was all because of the blade that was difficult to withdraw. Today, since there were so many Earth and Mystic powerhouses, he naturally wanted to see if he could compete with them with the various equipment he found on the battlefield. It's him. It's him. Elder Li, who was still thinking, saw the mask that had been imprinted in his heart, and his expression changed greatly. His whole body suddenly trembled violently. Cui Lao and the others were confused. Who? Say it. Elder Li was so scared that he almost couldn't float in the air, and the fear in his eyes was abnormally strong. He stammered, Star. Falling Star continents. Jun Changxiao. Ah! The Tualuo continent's martial artists all widened their eyes. The guy they were talking about just now had actually appeared in front of them, and he was the murderer of Elder He. Jun Changxiao's gaze locked on Elder Li. He said with a smile, I remember now. You're the martial artist who retreated in the opposite direction when the group of people were attacking me. Elder Li's expression was very ugly. At that time, he had followed more than 10 Earth powerhouses to attack, but he smelled danger in advance, so he hurriedly retreated. That was how he survived. I accidentally passed by this place, and that guy attacked first with killing intent, so I killed him instead. You guys are with him. It's reasonable for you to seek revenge. Jun Changxiao summoned all his equipment and held the Black Dragon's suicidal spear in his hand. He said, then I'll have a good fight with you guys today. The Tualuo continent's powerhouses were all dumbfounded. This guy's equipment was obviously Earth-grade. Jun Patriarch. Cui Lao hurriedly cupped his hands and said, we just happened to pass by and have no intention of fighting. Goodbye. Whoosh! 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 In an instant, the 20 Tualuo continent's powerhouses who came menacingly all slipped away at lightning speed. Jun Changxiao shook his head. Are they that afraid of me? Chapter 934. The 20 experts from the Tualuo continent had been scared away. Part of it was because Jun Changxiao had gone on a killing spree, and part of it was because he was wearing Earth-ranked equipment. In a battlefield where having a single piece of equipment was enough to make one feel like they were flying to the heavens, a single person wearing a 6-piece divine equipment set would definitely be terrifying. Sigh. Jun Changshao sighed. I really want to fight with them. He had found so many pieces of equipment on the battlefield to show off, but he didn't even get a chance to fight. Seeing him so smug, the host felt uncomfortable. Host, take off your equipment. Do you believe that they will drown you with their saliva? I believe. Jun Changshao said. With his current strength, if he didn't have any equipment, he would be thankful if he could fight an Earth-ranked expert to a standstill. It's rare for the host to have such self-awareness, the system said. But Jun Changshao said seriously. If I don't use my equipment and fight them barehanded, my brain must have been kicked by a donkey. No one else could be so righteous when using cheats. Let's try this ancient warship. Jun Changshao didn't chase after the fleeing Tua Luo continent experts. Instead, he landed outside the swamp and summoned the ancient warship, sending his thoughts into it. Pang! There was a loud explosion, and white mist rose. When the cold wind blew, a wooden boat appeared. The boat was about 200 zhang long, and it gave off a desolate aura, as if it had been here for a long time. Domineering. Jun Changshao looked up, and his eyes flashed with surprise. Shwa! With a leap, he landed on the deck, and a creaking sound could be heard. Jun Changshao had already inspected the outer structure of the boat, so he didn't look at it carefully. He walked directly into the cabin and saw the strange pentagonal formation. In its pocket-sized form, the pattern wasn't very clear. Now that it was enlarged, he saw that there were 5 diagonal areas with 2 grooves, which seemed to be used to embed some kind of energy. Understood. Jun Changshao said, this is a driving formation. It needs to be loaded with energy to operate. The reason why he was able to confirm it so quickly was because the guns, cannons, and all kinds of equipment he bought in the shop had similar notches that were charged with the energy of crystal cores. The crystal cores should be able to be used as fuel. Jun Changshao took out 10 crystal nuclei and embedded them in the notch. Sure enough, after the crystal cores were all in place, the strange and ancient spell formation suddenly flickered with light. Swish! A gentle stream of light spread out. Jun Changshao's will came into contact with the ancient warship as his body trembled slightly. He instantly felt as though he had gained complete control over this ancient warship. Rise! Issue orders. The array formation in the cabin glowed brightly, and the ancient warship slowly rose into the air, hovering 1,000 feet above the ground. A ship used for navigation was suspended in the air. It was a very strange scene. Unbelievable! Jun Changshao exclaimed as he carefully inspected the interior of the ancient warship. In the end, he came to the conclusion that there was no problem in accommodating 100 people. Not only was there a cabin for people to rest in, there was also a kitchen, a hall, a training room, and other facilities. It was obvious that the person who built the warship knew how to enjoy life. After the tour, Jun Changshao came to the bow of the warship and stood with his hands behind his back. From now on, the battlefield will be under my control. Under the control of his will, the floating ancient warship flew into the distance with a swish. Ho ho ho! Jun Changshao, who was standing at the bow of the warship and acting coquettishly, was blown by the wind. Not bad. The speed of the ancient warship was not as fast as the combination of his mechanical wings and flying ability. However, it was still much faster than an ordinary Earth-class expert. In other words, this warship was not one of those treasures that were so fast that it defied the heavens. However, it was still a vehicle that could accommodate many people. Its value was reflected. What was its value? It could bring disciples along to act cool and fly together. Ho ho ho! Ho ho ho! A few hundred miles away, the 20 martial artists from the Tua Luo continent slowed down. Their faces were red as they breathed heavily. We escaped. Elderly was still in a state of shock. At that time, with the distance between them and Jun Changshao, if they had been in a frenzied state like before, they would have long since fallen under Jun Changshao's control. They could only watch helplessly as they were killed. Chui Lao said with lingering fear, I didn't expect to meet the killing god of the falling star continent in the swamps. Elder Song, who was very arrogant just a moment ago, became mute. Initially, he looked down on the Nine Heavens continent. However, when he saw Jun Changxiao's Earth-class equipment, he finally understood why the first echelon had suffered such a huge loss. This kid is extraordinary. Chui Lao, who had gradually calmed down, said seriously, when we return to the stronghold, we must tell the patriarch not to provoke him. After pausing for a while, he added, not to provoke the falling star continent. That's right. Everyone agreed. Suddenly, the sky darkened. It felt as though there were dark clouds passing by. The martial artists from the Tua Luo continent looked up instinctively and were dumbfounded. This was because they saw something with an ancient aura flying slowly in their field of vision. This is a ship. Chui Lao and the rest opened their mouths in shock. At this moment, the 20 martial artists from the Tua Luo continent clearly saw a young man with black hair standing on the bow of the ship. They exclaimed, it's him. Jun Changxiao looked at the shocked crowd below and smiled. Hi, we meet again. The corners of Chui Lao and the rest's mouths twitched. This guy's supreme-class equipment was already scary enough. Now that he was on a ship that could fly, the shock was even more intense. Moreover, there was something more important. Everyone was a Xian and Earth-class expert, and they had released their spiritual senses. Why did they only realize it when the shadow of the ship descended? The ancient warship was still emitting a desolate aura. Then, it slowly flew away under the watchful eyes of the martial artists from the Tua Luo continent. Chui Lao, Elder Song was dumbfounded. The ship can actually fly. Chui Lao said, this is the first time I've seen it. If I'm not wrong, this item must be from the upper world. It was definitely not a wild imagination. It was indeed from the upper world. Moreover, if Elder He hadn't wanted to silence them, this treasure should have been from the Tua Luo continent. The ancient warship was still flying above the battlefield. However, from the slow speed, it was obviously very different from when it took off. Jun Changxiao came to the control room, puzzled. Of the 10 crystal cores placed in the pentagonal formation, 5 had dimmed, and the other 5 were in a state of exhaustion. It can't be. Jun Changxiao was stunned. The 10 high-grade crystal cores were used up so quickly. The system said, a warship that can fly is of extraordinary quality. It's normal for it to consume a lot of fuel. Jun Changxiao understood this point. However, the 10 crystal cores he embedded in the formation were comparable to the Martial King level. It was too expensive to use them up after flying for less than 500 miles. If he really wanted to go to the 3 provinces overseas in the future, the journey would be extremely long. It would definitely be a huge expense to take the disciples on a self-driving trip. Forget it. Jun Changxiao shook his head. Let's take the high-speed rail. The system said, the host can use spirit stones as fuel. Jun Changxiao's mouth twitched. Do you think I have so many spirit stones that I can use them as fuel? Try it. The system said, perhaps different levels of energy will allow the warship to fly faster and longer. That makes sense. Jun Changxiao took out 10 artificial spirit stones. No. Not exciting enough. He put away the artificial spirit stones and took out the natural spirit stones. However, he still felt that it was not exciting enough, so he took out 10 6-pointed star stones and placed them in the groove. Ta! Standing on the bow again, Jun Changxiao put his hands behind his back and said, let's fly. Whoosh! The ancient warship received its master's order and instantly flashed. Then, it charged forward at an extremely fast speed. Coincidentally, Chui Lao and the rest flew over. When they saw the huge ship suddenly vanish into thin air, all of them were dumbfounded. Half a day later. Elder Song said in horror, it's so fast that we can't even see the tail of the ship. Chapter 935. How fast would the ancient warship be after it was boosted by 10 hexagonal stones? Jun Changshao, who had originally been standing at the bow of the ship, was now tightly hugging the mast like a flag swaying in the wind. Slow down. Slow down. Whoosh! Under the control of its master, the ancient warship gradually slowed down and entered a slow flight mode. Heavens! Using hexagonal stones as fuel was like changing the engine. The system said, "My guess is correct." Jun Changshao ignored it and went to the cabin. The 10 hexagonal stones were shining brightly. He smiled and said, "We've flown at least 500 miles, and it's still full of energy. Crystal cores can't compare to its speed and endurance." It was decided. If he went to the 3 provinces overseas, he would travel by ship. The reason why Jun Patriarch was so confident was because he had extorted a lot of hexagonal stones from the 9 Heavens continent. Oh, right. What good stuff did that guy have in his ring? Jun Changshao casually took out Elder He's spatial ring and started reading through it. An Earth-ranked expert from the Tualuo continent had quite a lot of things in his ring, especially a few martial arts manuals. I can use them to make up the numbers. Jun Changshao kept the manuals in his spatial ring and continued reading. He found 10 glowing ores and guessed, these should be martial arts resources like spirit stones and star stones. That was right. They had the same function, but different names. The author was too lazy to name them. So, from today onwards, all resources with the same function as spirit stones would be replaced by spirit stones. The energy contained in spirit stones from the Tualuo continent was much stronger than those from the falling star continent, but it was still inferior to hexagonal stones. If I knew this would happen, I wouldn't have killed that guy and let his plane use this martial arts resource as a ransom, Jun Changshao said. Let's go. Whoosh! The ancient warship traveled at full speed, shuttling through the endless battlefield. Did something fly over there just now? I felt it too. Strange, I didn't catch it with my spiritual sense. Could it be that I've been cultivating too much recently and am hallucinating? All the martial artists were surprised. They didn't know that a large ship had just flown by. At the Starfall continent stronghold, Li Qingyang, Xiao Ziji, and the others were busy with construction. Suddenly, the sky darkened. Everyone raised their heads and saw a large ship hovering above them at some point in time. Ship? Long Xiang's eyes widened. The Patriarch is up there. Li Fei's eyes were sharp, and he discovered Jun Changshao standing at the bow of the ship. He Wudi and Yixingchen's expressions froze when they saw the huge warship floating in the air. Then, they started imagining things. The ancient warship remained suspended in the air above the stronghold. This was the standby mode. Although it would consume energy, in front of the powerful hexagram, it was almost negligible. At this moment, Li Qingyang, Xiao Ziji, and the others had already flown up. They stood on the deck and looked around, like country bumpkins who had never seen the world. Patriarch, Li Fei said in disbelief, is this ship a supreme treasure? Not only is it a supreme treasure, but it's also a flying supreme treasure. Jun Changshao said. Amazing! Li Fei and the others' eyes were filled with worship. They went out and brought back a flying warship. It was completely beyond their imagination. I have sinned. Jun Changshao took out the desolate spirit shield, and threw it over, saying, take this shield and use it. Xiao Ziji took the shield. Just by touching it, he could tell that it was definitely much stronger than the black iron shield. He said excitedly, thank you Patriarch for your reward. Jun Changshao took out the Black Dragon's suicide spear, and threw it to Long Xiang after some consideration, saying, this is yours. Thank you Patriarch for your reward. Long Xiang took the Black Dragon's suicide spear, and fondled it. I also have a Scarlet Lotus battle armor, who wants it? Jun Changshao said. Me. Yixingchen hurriedly said. Brother Anyo had changed. He wasn't like this in the past. Jun Changshao threw the Scarlet Lotus battle armor over, saying, I hope you can spread the might of the falling star continent in the planar battlefield. Because he had to manage and develop the sect, he couldn't stay in the planar battlefield forever. He gave the equipment to the disciples in the hope that they would inherit his will and turn the world upside down. Yes, the disciples said in unison. After bringing the ancient warship to the stronghold, it met the requirements of obtaining fortuitous opportunities and expanded by 10,000 square meters. However, this wasn't enough to satisfy Jun Changshao. In the next few days, he went out one after another to search for fortuitous opportunities on the battlefield. As long as he set his eyes on something, he would definitely sweep it clean. There were many types of fortuitous opportunities on the battlefield. There were martial arts, equipment, treasures, and many natural treasures. After Jun Changshao returned, as long as it was suitable for the disciples, he would give it to them. In a short 10 days, the falling star continent's stronghold expanded a lot. After reaching a certain size, Jun Changshao used the terrain remodeling tool to build a mountain and then used the 5 elements formation to prop it up. One day, when Jun Changshao returned and gave a pair of speed-increasing boots to Li Fei, a deep voice suddenly sounded in the sky. The falling star continent's stronghold has the basic size of a town. The battlefield merit store is officially activated. Whoosh! As soon as the voice finished, the empty space near the main hall flashed with light. A building surrounded by clouds and mist appeared out of thin air. There was a plaque with the words, Battlefield Merit Store, engraved on it. It's finally here. Jun Changshao rubbed his hands and walked into the majestic merit store. There were no decorations inside. There were wooden signs on the east wall with many small words written on them. Spirit Origin Sword, 100 merit points required. Origin Condensing Pill, 100 merit points required. Cloud Sail Sword Art, 100 merit points required. At the bottom of the wooden sign, there was a line of words. The content was, when the merit points meet the requirements, you only need to take off the wooden sign to obtain the corresponding item. Jun Changshao touched his chin and said, it's a bit similar to the system store. It was only similar, but its functions were definitely not comparable to the system store. After all, there was no introduction. Who knew if the Spirit Origin Sword and Origin Condensing Pill were strong or not? I have a lot of merit points. I can buy it and try it. Jun Changshao walked over and took off the wooden sign with the Spirit Origin Sword and Origin Condensing Pill. Whoosh! Whoosh! Suddenly, a bright sword and 10 pills appeared in his hand. Jun Changshao said in surprise, it's a bit magical. Clang! He unsheathed the sword. The sword flashed. After examining it, Jun Changshao shook his head and said, it's far from the true Yang sword. Gulp. He ate a Origin Condensing Pill. The effect of the pill is about the same as the Qi Gathering Pill, but it only increases the absorption speed by 20 times. Jun Changshao shook his head and said, the battlefield merit store is too disappointing. If the martial artists who fought for merit points heard this, they would definitely vomit blood on the spot. It was not that Jun Changshao was showing off, but after exchanging several items in succession, he concluded that weapons, pills, and even martial arts manuals could not be compared to the system store. Martial artists could treat them as treasures, but in front of him and his disciples, they were not of any substantial help. No. They were helpful. At least he could exchange for secret manuals and use them to make up the numbers in the technique pavilion. Origin Condensing Pill and Qi Gathering Pill did not conflict, so taking them together to increase the absorption speed was not bad. As for equipment and treasures, they were not worth exchanging, because Jun Changshao had found a lot of opportunities recently. Several core disciples had already gathered 6 sets. Junior brothers. At the edge of the stronghold, Li Qingyang glanced at Xiao Ziji, Yi Xingchen, and the other disciples and said with a solemn expression, the patriarch has found so many pieces of equipment for us. Don't let him down. We must live up to the prestige of the fallen star continent on the battlefield. Okay. Everyone's eyes flickered. Let's go. Li Qingyang was the first to fly out. Xiao Ziji, Yi Xingqian, He Wudi, and the others followed one after another. On this day, the sect of all times' disciples flew out of the stronghold. The hard-working martial artists in the dimensional battlefield were probably trembling. Sitting in the main hall, Jun Changshao looked at his treasures flying away and said with a smile, "Although the overall strength of the fallen star continent is not as good as other dimensions, we can crush them with equipment." Chapter 936. Boom! Boom! In a certain area of the dimensional battlefield, 2 yellow-class martial artists, who were as strong as rank 7 or rank 8 Wu Huang, were condensing all kinds of moves and bombarding the dusty area below. A moment later, the two stopped. "Big brother," the shorter martial artist said, "that arrogant guy probably didn't even have a hair left after being bombarded." The martial artist called Big Brother sneered, "Isn't it good to be alive? Why did he have to come here to die?" The two brothers were originally looking for opportunities in the dimensional battlefield. Suddenly, someone flew over and then provoked them in all kinds of ways, resulting in the bombardment just now. "Hey!" Suddenly, a voice came from the dusty area, "Don't be happy too early." Hearing this, the smiles on the two martial artists' faces froze. Whoosh! A gust of wind blew, and the dust dissipated. Xiao Ziji, who was wearing the true yang set, stood proudly in place, a trace of disappointment in his eyes. He thought that these two martial artists would be very strong, but he just stood there and let them bombard him. They didn't even bring him any substantial threat, and he didn't even bother to use the Desolate Spirit Shield. "Big brother, he's actually fine. How is that possible?" Bang! Xiao Ziji stomped his foot, and the ground cracked as he rushed up like a cannonball. Whoosh whoosh, the desolate physique erupted, and an aura as heavy as a mountain instantly spread out. Boom! 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 Plop! Plop! After omitting a few hundred words of battle, the two martial artists from the Chi Mei continent had their mouths crooked and their eyes sunken in a deep pit. Xiao Ziji floated in the air, and said with disappointment, "I still have to find a higher-level martial artist to fight. Junior brother Yi." He looked back into the distance, "Let's go." Yi Xingqian, who was standing in the sky with his hands crossed, said lightly, "It took dozens of moves to deal with this kind of trash." Xiao Ziji could actually deal with his opponent faster, but this time, he came out of the stronghold to gain experience, so he hoped to fight for a while longer. Whoosh! Whoosh! The two of them left the area and continued to search for their target. Before long, they encountered a team of 5. Xiao Ziji was about to continue provoking them when he heard Yi Xingqian say, "Leave it to me." "All right." Swish! Yi Xingqian flew over and stood in front of the 5 of them. He said calmly, "A bunch of trash." If it was Xiao Ziji, he might have to use a lot of words to provoke the target. However, the proud and aloof Knight Emperor only used 4 words and his arrogant appearance to instantly fill up the taunt value. "You're courting death. Chop him up." Hoo. In an instant, the entire region erupted with energy, but it was just as brief as the blooming fireworks. This was because when Yi Xingqian appeared behind them and sheathed the true yang sword, the 5 yellow-titled martial artists fell to the ground one after another. Sword scars of the same size and depth appeared on their necks. "Junior brother Yi is so strong." Xiao Ziji gave a thumbs up. Yi Xingqian said, "If you can't kill your enemy in one hit, then there's no point in cultivating martial arts." This sentence, coupled with his proud and aloof figure, made him look unprecedentedly pretentious. However, in just a few minutes, more than 30 martial artists chased after them. Pei Aniu saw that the situation was bad and ran faster than anyone else. Xiao Ziji and Yi Xingqian were in the same group to train in the planar battlefield. Li Qingyang, Li Fei, and the others were also training in groups. Although they had just entered Wu Huang, they had top-tier equipment on them. They didn't fear any yellow-titled martial artists at all. For high-level continents, the planar battlefield was used to earn merit points, exchange them for martial arts resources, and find opportunities. Although it was possible to die at any time, it constantly attracted martial artists. For the core disciples of the sect of all times, the planar battlefield was a dungeon for leveling up. They didn't even need to farm for equipment because they already had 6 pieces. A few hours later, Li Qingyang and the others returned to the stronghold with excitement on their faces. They had all experienced real combat this time and had benefited a lot from fighting. Li Fei said, "Why aren't senior brother Xiao and junior brother Yi back yet?" Li Qingyang frowned and said, "Did they run into trouble?" Whoosh! Whoosh! At this moment, Xiao Ziji and Yi Xingqian flew over from afar and landed on the floating stronghold in a rather sorry state. "Junior brother Xiao, what happened?" Li Qingyang asked. Xiao Ziji panted for a moment and said, "Junior brother Yi insisted on fighting with Shen-titled martial artists. In the end, he was chased by 10 Shen-titled martial artists for 2 hours. Humph," Yi Xingqian said indifferently, "if it wasn't for their numbers, I would definitely be able to finish them off one by one." Li Qingyang said, "Junior brother Yi, although the patriarch gave us a set of equipment, our strength is still limited. We must be careful when we go out to train." Yi Xingqian didn't say anything and walked towards the teleportation gate. "Let's go." Li Qingyang said, "Let's go back too." Everyone returned to the sect and began to digest the benefits of the real combat. In the next half a month, Li Qingyang and the others either built in the stronghold or went out to train together. Because they had a set of top-grade equipment and ran fast, the martial artists of the various continents had a headache. Dragon Head Peak. Jun Changshao sat in the study and took out 2 experience talismans, saying, "Half-step Wuxing doesn't have sub-realms. Is this thing still useful?" Paw! He crushed one of them. Whoosh whoosh! The psionic energy in the 2 spirit cores changed slightly. Jun Changshao shook his head and said, "The higher the realm, the less obvious the effect of the experience talisman." As he spoke, he crushed the other experience talisman. Although his psionic energy was strengthened, the increase in strength was not very significant. Patriarch. At this moment, Li Luoqiu hurried in and said, "The Taishan Shengzong was besieging the Demon Gate at the Raging Waves Lake when they were suddenly ambushed by a large number of masked men in black. They suffered heavy casualties." Jun Changshao's expression suddenly became solemn and said, "Is Xiaomu okay?" Although he was separated from the higher-ups of the Taishan Shengzong, the news said that he is fine. Li Luoqiu said, "That's good." Jun Changshao breathed a sigh of relief and said, "Are these masked men in black the same group that I investigated?" "Yes," Li Luoqiu said. Jun Changshao sat down and supported his right cheek with his fist. He said, "The Taishan Shengzong was exterminating the remnants of the Demon Gate. This organization's sneak attack should be related to the group of disciples that was separated from the Demon Emperor sect." Li Luoqiu was about to speak when the latest information came to her ears. She hurriedly said, "Patriarch, there is news from the West Cloud State. A force that calls itself the Demon Emperor's Gate announced to the public that they will fight to the death with the righteous sects." Demon Emperor's Gate? Jun Changshao was stunned. Li Luoqiu said again, "They also announced that the sneak attack on the Taishan Shengzong was their doing. Fighting to the death with the righteous sects, and then attacking the first-class sections." Jun Changshao said, "This Demon Emperor's Gate is going to cause trouble." Sure enough. For the next few days, the Falling Star continent was bustling with activity. The Demon Emperor's Gate that appeared out of nowhere launched a fierce attack on the righteous sects and exterminated several fifth-class sects one after another. Jun Changshao learned from the information that the sects that were exterminated had a characteristic, which was that they had followed the major sects to exterminate the remnants of the Demon Gate. Patriarch. Li Luoqiu said, "The fourth-class Azure Water sect was exterminated by the Demon Emperor's Gate. The upper echelons and tens of thousands of disciples were all killed. The righteous sects didn't make a move. Yes, 2 first-class sects joined forces with the second and third-class sects and are rushing towards the West Cloud State. I'm afraid a fierce battle will break out soon." Jun Changshao interlocked his fingers and rested his chin on the back of his hand. He said, "The Falling Star continent is about to enter the planar battlefield. The Demon Emperor's Gate is a little interesting for them to stir up trouble at this time. Patriarch Li Luoqiu said again, the Demon Emperor's Gate announced to the public that the Gate Master has the innate demon physique and obtained the Demon Emperor's inheritance. They also issued the Demon Emperor's order to recruit all the demon cultivators hidden in the Falling Star continent. Innate demon physique? Jun Changshao said in surprise, isn't it on Mengying? Could it be that this physique is not unique? Chapter 937. The sudden appearance of the Demon Emperor's Gate had destroyed several sects in just a few days. The righteous sects would definitely not tolerate this. Thus, 2 first-rate sects took the lead and joined forces with more than a dozen second-rate and third-rate sects to launch an attack. For a moment, all the martial artists and forces focused their attention on the West Fate province. The Drizzle Hall's intelligence network also began to operate. Dozens of intelligence reports were sent to them every day. Li Luoqiu filtered through them and reported the important information to the Patriarch. Tisk, tisk. Jun Changshao, who was fishing by the pond, heard the latest news and said in surprise, this Demon Emperor's Gate actually has 4 wusheng. Their strength can't be underestimated. Li Luoqiu said, the 2 first-rate sects suffered many casualties. Experts? Jun Changshao shook his head and said, just a bunch of small fries. The corner of Li Luoqiu's mouth twitched. The 2 first-rate sects that attacked the Demon Emperor's Gate had sent 4 half-saints, 10 Wu Huang, and dozens of martial kings. This lineup could be said to be luxurious, but the Patriarch actually described it as a bunch of small fries. If Hallmaster Li went to the planar battlefield and saw Jun Changshao's crazy slaughter with hard-to-retract blade, he would understand why he described it this way. Jun Patriarch was now someone who had experienced big scenes. Not to mention half-saints and Wu Huang, even if dozens of wusheng appeared in front of him, he would not be surprised. This Demon Emperor's Gate is the dark sect force that once ambushed me. If they don't have some strength, they definitely won't openly make an enemy of the righteous sects, Jun Changshao muttered. According to the information he had determined that the masked man in black who had repeatedly attacked him was a remnant of the demon's sect that had been separated from the Demon Emperor's sect. The guy who had previously invited him in Maple Valley might be one of the leaders. West Fate Province. On a tall mountain, spiritual energy was rampant, and space was distorted to the extreme. This was the place where the martial artists of the Demon Emperor's Gate fought with the righteous sections. Although the battle had already ended, the chilling atmosphere was still strong. Even a first-rate sect is only a so-so. A burly man in black armor stood on the battlefield, gnawing on the bloody thigh of a dire beast. A slender man stood next to him. He flicked the hair on his forehead and said indifferently, Vice Sect Master shouldn't have sent us to deal with this kind of trash. Ghost. A hunchbacked old man walked over and said in a deep voice, you are getting bolder and bolder. You dare to question the Vice Sect Master's orders. The man named Ghost smiled and said, I'm just saying it casually. Don't accuse me so casually. Let's go. A woman with a graceful figure withdrew her dagger and said indifferently, return to the sect. Although the 4 of them had different appearances, a chilling demonic aura gathered around them. Their cultivation was also at the Emperor's stage. These were the 4 great protectors of the Demon Emperor's Gate who had appeared out of thin air. The burly man was called a Burrish man, the slender man was called Ghost, the hunchbacked old man was called Een Dove, and the graceful woman was called Shadow. In the fierce battle just now, at least 500 to 600 martial artists of the righteous sects had died at the hands of these 4 people. They were definitely the main force. The sect forces in West Fate Province are almost cleaned up. When will we go to the other provinces to have fun? For example. Ghost smiled and said, the nearby Yangzhou in the southwest. Shadow, who was walking in front, said indifferently, this province is overseen by the sect of all times. The Vice Sect Master has ordered us not to provoke them for the time being. I'm curious. Ghost said, the sect of all times killed many of our people. Why doesn't the Vice Sect Master let us deal with them? Een Dove suddenly opened his mouth and said, you're doubting the Vice Sect Master again. No, Don't talk nonsense. Ghost said. A boorish man looked toward the southwest and grinned. I heard that the disciples of the sect of all times are very strong. I really want to meet them. Forget it. Ghost rolled his eyes and said, with your brute strength, you can destroy the entire sect with one punch. The vice sect master has his own ideas. As his subordinates, we only need to follow, Shadow said. Ghost shrugged and said, I'm just saying. Sect of all times, Dragonhead Peak. Li Luocho came to report again. According to the statistics, in the Battle of Mtiqingling in West Fate Province, the righteous sects led by two first-rate sects lost more than 1,000 people. What about the Demon Emperor's Gate? 100 people were injured. Only injured but not dead? Yes. Jun Changshao retracted his fishing rod and said, that's a bit powerful. Li Luocho said, according to the information sent by the spies, the disciples of the Demon Emperor's Gate are all Devil Cultivators, and they can forcefully activate their strength. Although there are many people from the righteous sects, they are completely crushed. After hiding in the dark for so long, they suddenly came out in the open. Naturally, they came prepared. If the righteous sects do not treat them seriously, they will suffer a great loss. Jun Changshao said. Li Luocho then said, many of the first-rate sects have already made their move. In my opinion, the show has just begun. Jun Changshao hung the bait, swung the rod out, and laughed, so we are in charge of watching the show. He needed to grasp the world situation, but he was not interested in participating in this kind of battle between the righteous and the demonic. After all, it was not against him. Moreover, Jun Changshao was very curious. Just how capable was this Demon Emperor's Gate to dare to challenge the entire continent's righteous sects? The sudden appearance of the Demon Emperor's Gate had broken the peace that had existed for a long time. It also made many martial artists realize that the world was about to become unstable. Sure enough. A few days later, a few top sects led by Taixian Shengzong sent out invitations, inviting the upper echelons of the various sects to discuss how to suppress the Demon Emperor's Gate. The sect of all times also received an invitation, but Jun Changshao only took a glance before crushing the invitation, and said, I am not interested in participating in the matters between you righteous and demonic, I just want to be a leisurely spectator. Patriarch. Elder Ma of the Tsangshan sect has come to see you. In the main hall. Ma Yinting sat at the head of the table, his expression a little ugly. Yesterday, the sect received an invitation to head to the Huiying Mountain to discuss the matter of suppressing the Demon Emperor's Gate. Tsangshan's sect had heard about the Demon Emperor's Gate. They definitely couldn't afford to offend this kind of power that could easily destroy fourth-rate sections. But it would be embarrassing if they didn't go, so the upper echelons were very conflicted. In the end, they sent Ma Yinting to the sect of all times to ask for Jun Patriarch's opinion. I won't go. Jun Changshao gave his opinion. Ma Yinting said bitterly, this way, it's the same as offending a few top sections. Jun Changshao said, Elder Ma, the reason why these sects invited your sect is to act as cannon fodder when dealing with the Demon Emperor's Gate. That's why the sect master sent this old man to ask for Jun Patriarch's opinion. Ma Yinting said. Jun Changshao said in a profound tone, the Demon Emperor's Gate has come out this time to target those large sections. Small sects like us don't have the strength to contend against it, so we can only watch from the sidelines. Ma Yinting, Tsangshan sect really doesn't have the strength to contend against it, but it's hard to say for the sect of all times. Understood. Ma Yinting stood up and cupped his hands. Tsangshan sect will follow Jun Patriarch and watch from the sidelines. After giving his opinion to this ally, Jun Changshao thought of another ally, so he whispered, that woman won't foolishly go to the appointment, right? Patriarch. Li Luocho reported, Miaohua Palace received the invitation, and Palace Master Shi brought the elders to Yinghui Mountain. Jun Changshao thought for a moment and said, I won't participate, but I can go and be a bystander. Thinking of this, he settled the sect's matters, then flew out and headed to Yinghui Mountain at an extremely fast speed. All the sects had gathered to discuss how to deal with the Demon Emperor's Gate. As the patriarch of the sect of all times and a member of the circle, there was nothing wrong with Goshen going to take a look. Li Luoqiu, who was standing on Drizzle Peak, shook her head. With Patriarch's personality, something will definitely happen if he goes and takes a look. Chapter 938. There was a very special mountain in the falling star continent called Reflection Mountain. There was no abundant spirit chi on the mountain, and the scenery was ordinary, but it was worshipped by the world. Every year, there were countless martial artists who came here to play. Why? Because back then, the demon slaughtering order had been issued from here. From that day on, the famous righteous sects and the demon emperor's sect fought to the death, leaving behind battles that were enough to be praised by future generations. Today, thousands of years later, under the operation of several first-rate sects, the upper echelons of the sects from all over the world once again rushed to Reflection Mountain. Of course, the Demon Emperor's Gate could not be compared to the Demon Emperor's sect. The scale of the righteous sects this time was far less than 1/10 of that time. Patriarch He. Sect Master Gong. At the foot of Reflection Mountain, the two sect elders met and exchanged polite words. Then, they walked together on the historic stone stairs, their eyes full of awe. Back then, the ancestors negotiated on this mountain to suppress the Demon Emperor's sect and exchanged thousands of years of peace for the falling star continent. The future generations would naturally remember it in their hearts. Today, they were invited by the first-rate sects to once again discuss how to suppress the Demon Emperor's Gate that had suddenly appeared. It gave them a sense of mission that they had never had before. The upper echelons of the sects who came later would be in awe every time they stopped at the foot of Reflection Mountain. In order to show their respect for the ancestors, even if they could fly up, they would choose to climb the mountain. Patriarch. A disciple stood at the foot of the mountain and said with admiration, "Although this Reflection Mountain looks very ordinary, this disciple feels a very familiar aura." The old man in embroidered clothes stood in front with his hands behind his back and said proudly, "Back then, when we suppressed the Demon Emperor's sect, our Bamboo Spirit sect also sent people here." "I see." The disciple said in realization, "No wonder there is a familiar feeling. It turns out that the aura of the ancestors is still here. Let's go." The Patriarch said, "Let's go up." Yes. Dozens of disciples followed him up the stairs, their hearts full of awe. Just as the martial artists of the various sects rushed over from all over the world and walked along the long mountain path, a stream of light flew toward the top of the mountain at an untimely time. This action instantly angered everyone. Who dares to fly on Reflection Mountain? In an instant, countless spiritual senses were released, enveloping the stream of light that was flying upwards. After seeing the other party's appearance, they exclaimed in unison, "The Patriarch of the Sect of all times. Why is he here? Could it be that the first-rate sects also sent invitations to this shameless fellow?" Jun Changshao, who was continuously ascending, suddenly stopped. His hair was not messy at all as he pointed at the sect leader halfway up the mountain and said, "You're spouting nonsense. I'll sue you for slander." The system said, "I think he's right." Jun Changshao ignored it and flew up the mountain again, leaving behind a group of angry senior members of the various sections. "Damn it! This Jun Changshao is too arrogant," one of the sect elders said angrily. "I haven't heard any news about the sect of all times recently. I thought they had changed their way of keeping a low profile. I didn't expect them to come to Reflection Mountain," someone said in surprise. Needless to say, ever since the end of the culinary god competition, the sect of all times had not caused any trouble in the martial arts world for a long time, so much so that everyone almost had nothing to talk about. It was mainly because of the appearance of the plain battlefield teleportation gate, which distracted Jun Changshao a lot of his attention. The disciples also had new dungeons, so they naturally wouldn't go out to play. In short, how could they be in the mood to play with the martial artists of the falling star continent when they could compete with the experts of all realms? Shwa! Jun Changshao landed on the top of the mountain. After ascending the mountain in advance, the senior members of the various sects who were bragging all turned their heads to look over, a trace of surprise appearing on their faces. Why is this guy here? Moreover, from the looks of it, he flew up directly. Humph. A middle-aged man in brocade clothes flashed with anger when he saw Jun Changshao. This person was the patriarch of the world-defying sacred sect, Ao Huanyu. His son, Ao Wushuang, participated in the dragon-tiger battle for hegemony and was still lying in bed after being abused by Yixingchen. TSK. Jun Changshao said, "There are quite a few people." There were already 400 to 500 martial artists gathered at the top of the mountain. Among them were the patriarch of a second-rate sect, as well as the upper echelons of a second-rate and third-rate sect. Of course, there were also quite a few sects who had grudges with the sect of all times. For example, the world-defying sacred sect, or the bright light sacred sect, who had fought for the mine, as well as the great development sacred sect and the heavenly dipper sacred sect. Every year, there would be a martial arts competition in Hua Mountain, and those who participated were only third-rate and fourth-rate sections. Today, it was very common for first-rate and second-rate sects to gather at Reflection Mountain. Everyone. Jun Changshao cupped his hands and said, "Don't misunderstand, I am only here to watch the show." The faces of the elders of the various sects darkened. So many sects of the Falling Star continent had gathered together to discuss how to eradicate the sudden appearance of the Demon Emperor's Gate. It was an incomparably serious matter, and he actually came to watch the show. Wasn't that the same as watching the joke of the entire continent? Jun Patriarch. Ao Huanyu said with a cold face, "Since your sect of all times is not participating, please go back." "What's wrong?" Jun Changshao sat in front of a huge rock and said with a sloppy look, "Is Reflection Mountain your home? No one is allowed to come up." Seeing his arrogant appearance, the elders of the various sects wanted to walk up and rub their faces against the ground. If it was really implemented, the result would be that the mountain would be flattened and their faces would be fine. After all, they had received the power from the upper realm, so the quality was guaranteed. Jun Changshao's words made Ao Huanyu speechless. Jun Patriarch. A kind-looking old man walked out and said with a serious expression, "The sudden appearance of the Demon Emperor's Gate is no small matter. Since we are righteous sects, how can we stay out of this? I'm sorry." Jun Changshao interrupted, "My sect of all times has never claimed to be a righteous sect. You want to pull me into a pit? There's no door or window." However, this sentence brought harm to the various sections. After all, they claimed to be righteous sections. Wasn't this guy trying to find a way to say that they were sanctimonious? Besides, Jun Changshao continued, "There are several Wuxing overseeing the Demon Emperor's Gate. My sect of all times' strength is limited. Even if we wallow in the mire with you, we won't be of much help." Speaking was an art. Go Sheng was interpreting another art, so he didn't know how to speak. He was sanctimonious and wallowing in the mire. The various sects couldn't bear to look at him directly. Jun Changshao. Ao Huanyu said angrily, "I think you're here to pick a fight." Jun Changshao said indifferently, "You're not a ripe melon. I have nothing better to do, so I came all the way here to pick a fight." The leaders of the various sects glared at each other, and the originally amiable atmosphere was replaced by solemnity. Hall Masterly guessed right. With Go Sheng's character, coming to take a look was definitely not a good thing. Jun Patriarch. At this moment, a light voice came from behind, "You're really here." Shi Jingxian walked over, her face full of joy. Zhang Sun Fanghua and Ling Xingyue, who were following behind, looked at each other and finally understood why the palace master came to Yinghui Mountain. It turned out that she wanted to see this kid. No. Why did the leaders of the various sects look so ugly? Why did they look at Jun Changshao with unfriendly eyes? Did this guy offend all of them? Palace Master Shi. Jun Changshao said, "It's better to leave dealing with the Demon Emperor's Gate to the various sects present. Fourth and fifth-rate sects like us shouldn't blindly get involved." When the leaders of the various sects heard this, they became even angrier. "It's fine if your sect of all times doesn't participate in the crusade against the Demon Emperor's Gate, but you even instigated the other sects not to participate. You're just a fucking shit-stirrer." Shi Jingxian smiled and said, "Jun Patriarch, I came to Yinghui Mountain just to see the scenery. I see. Jun Changshao jumped down from the boulder, pointed to the sea of clouds in the distance, and said with a smile, "Come, let's go over there to enjoy the scenery. Let's not disturb the leaders of the various sects discussing important matters." Shi Jingxian was stunned and followed with a red face. Zhang Sun Fonghua and Ling Xingyue were tactful and didn't follow. Especially when they looked at the backs of the palace master and Jun Changshao, they suddenly felt that the two were a match made in heaven. The leaders of the various sects forcefully suppressed their anger and continued to wait for the arrival of the other sections. However, when they occasionally saw Jun Changshao and Shi Jingxian chatting and laughing in the distance, they couldn't help but feel angry. In such a sacred place, that guy was actually openly flirting. Chapter 939. In the Sea of Clouds. Jun Changshao sat on a rock, vividly telling Shi Jingxian a story. As for the content of the story, there was no need to mention it. Seeing him flirt in front of them, the leaders of the various sects were extremely angry, but they could only suppress their anger and begin to communicate with each other. This time, they gathered at Yinghui Mountain not to be angry, but to discuss how to deal with the Demon Emperor's Gate. As for Jun Changshao, this shit-stirrer, if he didn't participate, then so be it. There were countless sects in the world anyway, so one more wouldn't make a difference. The actions of the leaders of the various sects were correct. The best way to deal with this kind of shameless person was to tolerate him, let him go, and ignore him. Half an hour later, 1,000 people gathered at the top of Yinghui Mountain. There were at least 100 sects from all over the world. 5 first-rate sects, 20 second-rate sects, and the rest were all third, fourth, and fifth-rate sections. The leaders of the various sects gathered together and began to discuss how to deal with the Demon Emperor's Gate quickly and efficiently. Palace Master Shi Goxing said with a smile, "What do you think they will do to deal with the Demon Emperor's Gate?" Shi Jingxian adjusted her glasses and said, "Unite all the sects together and have them send their own people to attack the Demon Emperor's Gate." Jun Changshao was stunned. Because this woman was thinking the same thing as him. Shi Jingxian had guessed correctly. After a careful discussion, the sects reached a consensus and decided to form an alliance to deal with the remnants of the demon sect. This consensus was made by the first and second-rate sects, and the third, fourth, and fifth-rate sects just went through the motions and nodded their heads. In fact, before they came to Yinghui Mountain, they had already expected this result. Because their levels weren't high enough and they didn't have enough authority, they could only cooperate with the large sections. To put it bluntly, the sects that weren't high level all had the awareness of being cannon fodder. Since that was the case, why did they still have to be silly? Because since they were in the circle, since they were invited, they had to brace themselves and come if they wanted to stay in the circle. For example, after receiving the invitation, wasn't Sangshan's sect also very conflicted about whether to participate or not? If it weren't for Jun Changshao's suggestion and because they didn't want to offend the large sects, they would have already come. In Jianghu, one had no choice. Although Jun Changshao was in the pugilistic world, he was an exception because with the current strength of the sect of all times, he dared to reject the invitation and dared to argue with the major sects on the mountaintop. To be able to ignore or break the rules, one must first have sufficient strength. Those fourth and fifth-rate sects could not do it, and could only follow behind the big sects as cannon fodder. The originally clear sky was suddenly filled with dark clouds from afar, and a drizzle began to fall. The cultivation levels of the various sects and clans at Reflection Mountain were not low, so the rain couldn't fall on them. They were still discussing seriously. Now that the alliance had been decided, they would definitely discuss how to attack the Demon Emperor's Gate. However, when it came to confidential matters, they all communicated via voice transmission. Occasionally, they would look at Jun Changshao warily, seemingly worried that he would eavesdrop on them. He was worrying too much. Jun Changshao had really come to Reflection Mountain to watch the show. He didn't care at all about how the various sects were targeting the Demon Emperor's Gate. The dark clouds that had gathered in the sky were pushed away by the wind. After the sun came out, a rainbow gradually appeared. "So beautiful!" Shi Jingxian exclaimed. Jun Changshao said, after the rain, there are water droplets in the air. When the sun shines at a low angle, it will produce such a natural wonder. Jun Patriarch knows a lot, Shi Jingxian said. Jun Changshao said modestly, I only know a little about a lot of things. Everyone. At this moment, the kind-looking old man said, it's decided. Please make more preparations when you go back. The big shots of the various sects cupped their hands. Obviously, when Jun Changshao accompanied Shi Jingxian to see the rainbow, they had already discussed everything. Goodbye. Goodbye. Just as the big shots of the various sects were about to leave, another dark cloud came from afar, and it emitted an extremely gloomy aura. Jun Changshao said to himself, demonic cultivator. Because Yao Menjing walked the path of a demonic cultivator, he was very familiar with this kind of aura. The big shots of the various sects also noticed it, and their expressions suddenly became serious. Swish! 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 In an instant, several black streams of light flew over with a sky full of demonic aura, and then hung on the peak of Reflection Mountain. There were a total of 5 people. 4 of them were old men in black robes, standing on the left and right respectively. In the middle was a handsome young man. That's right. It was the person Jun Changshao saw in Maple Valley, the person who might be a woman disguised as a man. Although the 4 old men in black robes had different appearances, they were all covered with a chilling demonic aura. Wu Sheng. Jun Changshao used the voice transmission technique without changing his expression. Inform the sect and ask Hall Master Z and Old Ding to rush over as soon as possible. Yes. The members of the Drizzle Hall at the foot of the mountain received the Patriarch's order and hurriedly sent the message further away. In a short time, Li Luoqiu, who was in the sect of all times, had already received the message. Swish! Swish! The Purple King and Old Ding didn't finish their meal and flew to Reflection Mountain at full speed. This kind of information transmission and movement was really super fast, and no sect in the Falling Star continent could compare to it. As expected. Li Luoqiu shook her head and said, something really happened. Using 2 of the sect's top forces made her guess that the situation might not be small. Back at Reflection Mountain. When a young man and 4 Wusheng appeared in the sky, the atmosphere suddenly became very serious. The kind-looking old man was someone who had been through a lot. He said in a deep voice, who are you? Let me introduce myself. The young man, who was even more handsome than Jun Changshao, smiled gently and said, my surname is Yuan. You can call me Yuan Gongzi, or you can call me, the Demon Emperor's Gate Deputy Sect Master. Demon Emperor's Gate? The faces of the big shots of the various sects changed. This time, they gathered at Reflection Mountain to discuss how to eradicate this demon sect. Now, the main character was here. So this guy is the Deputy Sect Master, Jun Changshao said secretly. Thinking that this person once said that he wanted to break the current rules and establish a new one, it seemed normal that he dared to become enemies with the famous righteous sections. Shi Jingxian transmitted her voice, Jun Patriarch, the situation is not good. Let's leave quickly. Everyone. Jun Changshao cupped his hands and said, you guys chat, we'll leave first. He had no interest in participating in the matter between the Demon Emperor's Gate and the famous righteous sections. He just wanted to be a quiet spectator. Jun Patriarch. Yuan Gongzi smiled and said, we're old friends. Are you leaving without chatting for a while? Jun Changshao's eyes flashed with a trace of displeasure. When this guy said old friends, he deliberately emphasized his tone, making it clear that he wanted the sects to have wild thoughts. Sure enough. When the big shots of the various sects heard this, their imaginations went wild. They even suspected that the sect of all times and the Demon Emperor's Gate were in cahoots. The other party's sudden attack might have been him who leaked the secret. Yuan Gongzi. Jun Changshao said lightly, you and I have only met once. We can't be considered friends. When we met in the purple bamboo forest in Maple Valley, Jun Patriarch and I had a good chat. How can we not be friends? Yuan Gongzi smiled and said. Damn you. Do you have to drag me down? Humph. Ao Huanyu sneered and said, so Jun Patriarch and the Demon Emperor's Gate's deputy sect master are old friends. No wonder they came uninvited. The big shots of the various sects glared at Jun Changshao. In the beginning, this guy's arrogance made them very angry, but they just didn't like his arrogant attitude. Now, under the instigation of the Demon Emperor's Gate's deputy sect master, they realized that this guy might be an enemy. So, their angry eyes were filled with strong hostility. Kid! Jun Changshao looked at Yuan Gongzi and said coldly, I said in the purple bamboo forest, don't try to threaten me, and don't repeatedly challenge my bottom line. You seem to have forgotten. Chapter 940. Yuan Gongzi, who had suddenly appeared, kept emphasizing that he was friends with Jun Changshao. His goal was to pit him against the righteous sects. The effect was good. The leaders of the various sects were already suspicious. Jun Changshao could naturally see through Yuan Gongzi's intentions, so he was very angry now. His sect of all times really didn't want to get involved in the matter between the Demon Emperor's Gate and the righteous sects, but this kind of behavior of forcefully dragging people into the water was really too annoying. Yuan Gongzi obviously didn't realize that his thoughts had angered Jun Changshao. He smiled and said, I've always remembered what Jun Patriarch said. I've never forgotten it. Is that so? Jun Changshao's face was gloomy. Back then in the purple bamboo forest, because there were hidden experts, he suppressed himself and didn't make a move. Although there were 4 Wusheng here today, the urge to beat the other party up was even stronger. The main thing was that those words were too annoying. Yuan Gongzi. Jun Changshao said coldly, I'm just here to be a bystander, but you insist on dragging me into the water. Fine, from now on, we're enemies. TSK, Ao Huanyu and the others sneered. In their opinion, Jun Changshao was very likely to have colluded with the Demon Emperor sect. Now, every word he said and every expression on his face was an act. Jun Patriarch. Yuan Gongzi said seriously, since we can't be friends, we can't be enemies. Then why are you fucking tricking me? Whoosh whoosh. Suddenly, a heavy aura appeared in the sky. The power of dragons and elephants gathered, and then brazenly pressed down on Yuan Gongzi. When the dragon-elephant Prajna palm was used, dozens of dragons and elephants shone brightly, instantly making the world lose its color. The leaders of the various sects were all shocked. They had never seen such a desolate aura that seemed to come from the endless starry sky. Arrogant. Wu Sheng, who was standing in front of Yuan Gongzi, waved his hand coldly. Vast and mighty demonic energy whizzed out and gathered in the air, forming a fist that soared into the sky and blasted towards the dragon-elephant force that was pressing down. Ka ka ka. The condensed power of a demonic cultivator at the level of Wusheng mercilessly tore the space apart. That terrifying evil chi crazily spread out, causing the martial artists of the various sects to turn pale with fright. Boom! At this moment, there was a deafening explosion. The demonic cultivator at Wusheng's level fell down the mountain like a cannonball. The whole process happened in the blink of an eye. Before the other 3 Wusheng came to their senses, they felt the overwhelming demon aura pressing down on them, forcing them to retreat in different directions subconsciously. As such, Yuan Gongzi no longer had any protection. He could only look on helplessly as the dracophant force pressed down. In the end, he said in horror, no, boom. The terrifying force pressed down on the top of Mount Inghui. The entire mountain shook violently and showed varying degrees of cracks. The martial artists of the various sects gradually stabilized their bodies. Their expressions changed again and again, and they exclaimed in their hearts, what kind of martial arts is this? Its power is so terrifying. Without time to think, they all looked up. Higher up, a naked purple-haired man wearing only red underwear was floating proudly. That's right. It was the Purple King. When Jun Changshao made his move, he had already rushed over. After receiving the order, he quickly exploded his clothes and forced the 4 Wusheng who were blocking the dracophant force to retreat. The elders of the various sects were collectively dumbfounded. The aura of this purple-haired man was even stranger than that of the 4 demonic cultivators just now. Moreover, after appearing, he scared them all away. His strength was definitely extraordinary. Whoosh! 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 The 3 whooshing demonic cultivators stabilized their bodies and looked at the Purple King with deep fear in their eyes. As for the Wu Sheng who tried to break the Dracophant Prajna palm, he was sent flying by the palm. His entire body seemed to have fallen apart as he lay in the deep pit at the foot of the mountain. Even the Earth-level experts of the dimensional battlefield couldn't withstand the Purple King's attack, let alone him. It had to be said. Jun Patriarch had foresight. When he saw Yuan Gongzi appear with 4 powerful fighters, he realized that there would be an unforeseen event. Thus, he contacted the Sect's experts in advance to rush over. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to act so smoothly. Ta! Walking to the edge of the deep pit caused by the Dracophant force, Jun Changxiao's psionic power turned into a large hand and grabbed Yuan Gongzi who was lying inside, then pulled him in front of himself. Vice Sect Leader. The 3 Wu Sheng were about to rush over. The Purple King landed and blocked their path. He said, "Whoever moves will die." 5 simple words vividly displayed his arrogance, and dominance. As expected of a Kuan from the upper realm, as expected of the Hall Master of the Sect of all times' spiritual hall. Although the 3 Wu Sheng wanted to save their Vice Sect Leader, they could feel that the Purple King was releasing a demonic aura that was stronger than their own. They could only stand there with difficulty. Kid! Jun Changxiao restrained Yuan Gongzi with his psionic power hand and said in a cold voice, "When we were in the purple bamboo forest, you challenged my bottom line. Since it was the first time we met, I didn't lower myself to your level. I didn't expect that when we meet again, you've become even worse. If I don't beat you up, how can I face the heavens and earth?" Wah! Yuan Gongzi spat out a mouthful of blood. His face was extremely pale. He, whose cultivation had reached the peak of Wu Huang's level, was already covered in bruises after receiving the Dragon and Elephant Prajna palm. This was after Jun Changxiao showed mercy. Otherwise, if the Dragon and Elephant force was fully unleashed, even 10 Yuan Gongzi wouldn't be enough to kill him. Of course. Judging from Yuan Gongzi's current sorry state, he was indeed a man. This was probably one of the reasons why Jun Changxiao attacked. After all, how could there be someone more handsome than himself in this world? Seeing that the self-proclaimed Vice Sect Leader of the Demon Emperor's Gate, Yuan Gongzi, was severely injured in one move, the elders of the Sect of all times muttered in their hearts. Could it be that the Patriarch of the Sect of all times was not in cahoots with him? Did we misunderstand? Listen up, all of you. At this moment, Jun Changxiao turned around and looked at the martial artists of the various sects present. He said angrily, "The Sect of all times is not interested in the matters between you all." This sentence contained the sword Dao, martial Dao, and the power of the 5 elements. It directly penetrated the hearts of the crowd, causing them to tremble in fear. Jun Patriarch is so scary. Looking at Jun Changxiao's angry back, Shi Jingxuan's bright eyes flashed with a trace of surprise, but she also secretly said, "But, he's also very mighty." One sentence was enough to intimidate everyone present. He was indeed mighty and domineering. Plop! Jun Changxiao casually threw Yuan Gongzi to the ground, then sat on a huge rock and said indifferently, "I'm just here to watch the show. Please continue." Although beating up the Vice Sect Leader of the Demon Emperor's Gate was partly to vent his anger, it was more to express to the elders of the various sects that he had nothing to do with him. Now, he had made his stance clear. Naturally, he could continue to be a spectator. Vice Sect Leader. 3 Wu Sheng quickly flew over. One of them carried Yuan Gongzi, then looked at each other and flew into the distance with tacit understanding. They came quietly and left quietly, only taking the injured with them. As for Wu Sheng, who was blasted to the foot of the mountain, he had disappeared, leaving only a deep pit and a swastika shape. After the experts of the Demon Emperor's Gate left, the demonic aura that gathered at the top of the mountain gradually dissipated. The elders of the various sects breathed a sigh of relief. According to the normal plot, Yuan Gongzi would definitely teach the righteous sects a lesson when he brought 4 Wuxing here. In the end, he had to provoke Jun Changshao, who remained neutral. Not only was he beaten up, but he was also beaten to the point that he couldn't stand up. The show couldn't continue, so it could only end abruptly. It was a classic example of not playing by the rules. Jun Patriarch. The kind-looking old man cupped his hands and said, "Thank you." Many elders of the various sects also cupped their hands and bowed, their eyes shining with gratitude. Although the top sects had also sent many experts, they were still far from being able to compete with the 4 Wusheng. If the other side really attacked, the consequences would be unimaginable. They ran away just like that. Jun Changshao shook his head and said, "I thought they would teach these sanctimonious righteous sects a lesson." The elders of the various sects twitched their mouths. Palace Master Shi. Jun Changshao said, "We've seen the scenery. Why don't we go back first?" "Okay." Shi Jingxian nodded. Jun Changshao led the people of Miaohua Palace down Yinghui Mountain. The Purple King, who had been hovering in the air, coldly glanced at the elders of the various sects at the top of the mountain and said, "Trash." He had a grudge against these righteous sects. After all, he was sealed by Wusheng, a top sect. If it weren't for the Patriarch, he definitely wouldn't have helped them resolve the crisis. Jun Patriarch. After walking down the mountain, Shi Jingxian was puzzled and asked, "Why didn't you kill the vice-sect master of the Demon Emperor's Gate and get rid of the evil for the falling star continent?" In the situation just now, Yuan Gongzi was seriously injured. Even a martial disciple could easily kill him. Jun Changshao shook his head and said, "He's targeting the righteous sects, not the sect of all times. Naturally, there's no need to kill him." Shi Jingxian said, "Jun Patriarch wants to see the Demon Emperor's Gate and the various sects fight?" "That's right." Jun Changshao said frankly. Zhangsun Fenghua and Ling Xingyue, who were following behind, heard this and frowned slightly. They could understand why the sect of all times didn't participate. However, the Demon Emperor's Gate was threatening the continent and the living beings. Wasn't it a bit too much for them to just watch from the sidelines? The two of them had such thoughts because they prided themselves as righteous sects and had a sense of justice in their bones. A sense of justice. Jun Changshao had it too. However, he didn't have a good impression of the Demon Emperor's Gate and the righteous sects. Naturally, he wouldn't care. Shi Jingxian said, "If the two sides fight, will it benefit Jun Patriarch?" "No." Jun Changshao was just watching the show. As for sitting on top of the mountain to watch the tigers fight and reap the benefits, he didn't care at all. This was what a qualified onlooker should be like. Shi Jingxian said, "Jun Patriarch is different from others." "You're different too," Gou Xing said with a smile. Shi Jingxian was stunned. Jun Changshao said telepathically, "Palace Master Shi's appearance gives people a very weak feeling. However, to be able to become the Palace Master of Miaohua Palace and be called a Wonder Woman, you're definitely not an ordinary person. I just happened to take over a 4th-rate sect. I'm not like Jun Patriarch, who developed the 9th-rate Iron Bones sect into the 4th-rate sect of all times." Shi Jingxian said with a smile. The system couldn't help but ridicule, what's the point of flattering each other? Palace Master Shi. Jun Changshao cupped his fists and said, "I still have matters to attend to in the sect. Jun will take his leave first." And then Shi Jingxian had just finished speaking when Jun Changshao flew away, leaving behind the beauty looking at him with disappointment. Whoosh whoosh. In the dark and damp cave, firewood was lit. Not only did it dispel the cold air, but it also gradually emitted the fragrance of roasted meat. Sister Xia. Su Xiaoma handed over the roasted pheasant and said, "Eat until you're full. Your injuries will heal faster." Xia Shuiyun, who was sitting cross-legged, opened her eyes and calmly took the roasted pheasant. Then, she turned around and ate. "Sister Xia, you eat first." Su Xiaoma stood up and said, "I'll go get some spring water for you." "Wait." Xia Shuiyun turned her back to him and said, "You're also heavily injured. Why don't you rest? If we all rest, who will protect Sister Xia? Su Xiaoma said with a smile. Then, he left the cave to look for water. Xia Shuiyan fell silent. She recalled the scene a few days ago when she was ambushed by the masked man in black and used his back to block a palm strike for her. The layer of ice covering her heart slowly melted. Chapter 941. Back to, forget it, let's put it in a nutshell. Taishan Shengzong went to the Raging Waves Lake to eradicate a small group of demon sect members, but he was ambushed. The two sides fought fiercely, and the disciples were separated from the higher-ups in the end. Su Xiaoma and Xia Shuiyan were together when a masked man, whose strength was at the peak of Wuzong's level, suddenly attacked them. He hurriedly blocked a palm for her with his back, and then the two of them staggered into the depths of the forest. If he blocked a bullet for a girl in a critical moment, her favorability would definitely increase. Sister Xia. After a while, Su Xiaoma came in with a spring water and said with a smile, "The spring water here is very sweet." Xia Shuiyan took the water and drank it. Then she tried to stand up, but because her injuries had not completely healed, she was on the verge of collapsing. Su Xiaoma hurriedly reached out to support her and said, "You're so badly injured, don't force yourself to stand up." Xia Shuiyan's expression changed slightly. She wanted to push this guy away, but she was afraid of aggravating her injuries, so she sat down again and said, "Let go of me." Su Xiaoma let go of her and then retreated to the entrance of the cave, saying, "You recover, I'll protect you. Remember, you have to find the emotional point at all times to move the other party." Elder Wei's words rang in her ears. Swoosh! Su Xiaoma sat down with his back facing Xia Shuiyan. There was a dark palm print on his back, which was left behind by the masked man's attack. Seeing this, Xia Shuiyan remembered that he had sacrificed himself to save her, rolling on the ground and howling in pain. The coldness on her face dissipated. She lowered her head and said in a voice as soft as a mosquito, "I'm sorry, I dragged you into this." Su Xiaoma said with a smile, "I'm honored to be able to block a palm for Sister Xia. Elder Wei. I think I'm about to succeed." If Elder Wei was here, he would definitely smile with relief. Glib tongue. Xia Shuiyan rolled her eyes at him and tried to stand up again. She leaned against the stone wall and said, "My injuries will take some time to recover. You should rest first." Su Xiaoma had just said one word when he saw the woman glaring at him, so he walked in and said, "All right." Hoo. His heart sutra was activated, and spiritual energy enveloped him. Xia Shuiyan, who was struggling to move to the front of the cave, saw this and her bright eyes were filled with surprise. He has actually comprehended the heart approaching technique to the level of materializing spiritual energy. Lin Xianju was the highest level mental cultivation method in the outer sect of Taishan Shengzong. Only those who were recognized by the higher-ups would be able to practice it. Su Xiaoma, who had been listed as one of the next batch of inner sect disciples, used only 1 month to comprehend it to the great accomplishment stage. It would be very easy for an expert with a saint-grade spiritual root to practice the mental cultivation technique of an outer court disciple. Of course. Su Xiaoma was just pretending. In fact, he was not injured at all. 4 hours later, the dark palm print on his back weakened a lot. He pretended to be energetic and stood up, saying, "Sister Xia." Because of her injuries, Xia Shuiyan fell asleep leaning against the stone wall at the entrance of the cave. Looking at her pale face, Su Xiaoma could not help but think, if not for my protection, this woman would have died in Nuteo Lake. He walked over. He took out a blanket from his space ring and covered Xia Shuiyan with it. Although he was very careful, he still woke her up. She suddenly opened her eyes and a trace of coldness flashed through them. After confirming who it was, she became gentle. "Your injuries have healed?" "Yes, almost." That masked man's strength was at the peak of Wuzong, and his martial arts were very strange. "How did you recover so quickly?" Faced with Xia Shuiyan's doubts, Su Xiaoma took out a broken tile and said, "This is a treasure that Master left for me to protect myself. It dissipated most of the power." I see. Xia Shuiyan suddenly understood. It's a pity. Su Xiaoma said bitterly, it's broken now. When we return to the sect, I will ask my grandfather to give you another defensive treasure, Xia Shuiyan said. Su Xiaoma said with a smile, senior sister has already given me a bottle of tranquil heart and icy skin pills. How can I take your things? As he spoke, he subconsciously touched his waist and said in surprise, where's the bottle? Where's my bottle? It's over, it's over. It must have fallen outside. I'll go look for it. Xia Shuiyan said, it's just an empty bottle. Do you need to care so much? Su Xiaoma stopped at the entrance of the cave and said, for many people, it's just an ordinary bottle. But for me, it's more precious than my life. Because, it was given to me by Sister Xia. Idiot. Xia Shuiyan said lightly. Then she waved her hand and took out the bottle of tranquil heart and icy skin pills. She said, you fell into the cave when you were looking for water. Su Xiaoma happily picked it up and wiped it with his sleeve. When he was about to put it on his waist, he felt that it was not safe, so he directly stuffed it into his clothes. Xia Shuiyan saw this and muttered in her heart, since you like bottles so much, I'll give you a bunch when we go back. Give me the broken treasure. I'll see if there's any possibility of repairing it. It's already broken. I don't think it can be repaired. Su Xiaoma handed over the tile and said to himself, this is just a random tile I found. Don't let her see through it. Xia Shuiyan examined it and then put it into her sleeve. She said, it's already broken. Even the aura of the treasure is gone. It's impossible to repair it. Su Xiaoma's mouth twitched. Big sister, if you can't fix it, then give it to me. What do you mean by taking it away? Xia Shuiyan saw that he was a little reluctant and said lightly, I gave you a bottle, and you gave me a tile. We're even. You don't want to. I do. Xia Shuiyan's injuries were very serious, and there were no special healing pills. So Su Xiaoma was not in a hurry to take her away. Instead, he was responsible for taking care of her carefully. Occasionally, he would go out to collect herbs and brew a soup for her to recover her meridians. You've learned medicine. Master is very proficient in the art of medicine. I learned a little bit when I was cultivating with him. Oh. Xia Shuiyan said, your master, old man Jun Tian, is very powerful. He can scare off a herd of beasts with just one look. Su Xiaoma said as he brewed the herbs, I'm not bragging. My master is erudite and knowledgeable. He's definitely one of the best in the world. Knowledgeable? Xia Shuiyan was interested. She asked, what does he know? He knows martial arts, sword arts, alchemy, formations, and, Su Xiaoma mumbled a lot, directly molding Jun Changshao into a super omnipotent existence. Fortunately, Go Sheng was not present. Otherwise, he would definitely kick him and roar, you made me sound so awesome. How can I act in the future? Xia Shuiyan said, I'm really envious of your master. He can live a carefree life, unlike me who has to do everything according to a set schedule every day. Su Xiaoma said with a bitter smile, Sister Xia has a special ice-type physique. She has an elder who's her grandfather, and is highly valued by the sect. Her future is bright. Is she still not satisfied? Xia Shuiyan said, there are too many rules in the sect. Don't you find it oppressive? Su Xiaoma said with a self-deprecating smile, to a genius like Sister Xia, it might be oppressive. But to an ordinary person like me, if I don't work hard, I'll lose everything. I'll become an existence that everyone laughs at. What a painful realization. Have you heard of Lu Qianshan? Xia Shuiyan suddenly asked. Lu Qianshan? Su Xiaoma said, I heard senior brother Sun mention her. It seems that she was once one of the top geniuses in Taishan Shengzong. Later, she was expelled for breaking the rules. Yes. Xia Shuiyan shook her head and said, she was expelled just because she entered the ice spring to cultivate without the permission of the higher-ups. Senior sister Lu's talent is higher than mine, but she can't break the restrictions set by the sect. How sad is that? Senior sister was expelled for this reason. Su Xiaoma was secretly shocked. This was the most crucial information he got when he came to Taishianshengzong as a spy. But a top genius was expelled because she went to the ice spring to cultivate without permission. Wasn't it too careless? Impossible, impossible. Su Xiaoma said secretly, this is probably the excuse of the higher-ups. Maybe there's another reason. Xia Shuiyun adjusted her slightly depressed state of mind and said with a cold face, don't tell anyone about this. Keep it to yourself forever. Okay. Su Xiaoma nodded and then asked, Sister Xia, I heard that this Lu Qianqian later joined the Sect of All Times and even participated in the dragon and tiger battle for hegemony. That's right. Xia Shuiyun said, I also didn't expect that after being crippled by the higher-ups and deprived of all the martial arts memories of the Taishianshengzong, she would still have a chance to make a comeback. Damn! Su Xiaoma was secretly shocked. Senior sister was actually crippled by the Taishianshengzong. If the patriarch knew about this, he would definitely explode on the spot. The disciples of the Sect of All Times are very strong. I don't know what elixirs they took. Xia Shuiyun said. She had seen the dragon and tiger battle for hegemony on the screen and also witnessed the strength of this new sect's disciples. Su Xiaoma said to himself, you guys only saw how strong we were, but you didn't see how we cultivated. The molding room, the training tower, and the life and death secret realm. These kinds of martial arts facilities could increase one's strength, but the effort and sweat required were also dozens of times more than ordinary people. Gurgle, gurgle. The medicine soup began to boil. Su Xiaoma collected his thoughts. After boiling for more than 10 minutes, he carefully poured it into a bowl. Splash! The calm surface of the lake suddenly rippled with water. Caught it, caught it! After a while, Su Xiaoma's head popped out of the water. He grabbed a big fish and said with a smile, Senior sister, we have fish to eat tonight. It had to be said that the magic-modified facial mask was really awesome. It didn't even show its face when soaked in water. Paw! The big fish swung its tail and slapped Su Xiaoma's face. Then, it dived into the water. No way! This fish is so strong. Pfft! Seeing that his left face was red, Xia Shuiyun covered her mouth and laughed. Then, she said, you caught a strength fish. Its explosive power is not inferior to that of a peak martial disciple. No wonder. Su Xiaoma rubbed his face and said angrily, today, we must catch it and roast it. Gurgle. He dived into the water and quickly caught the escaping strength fish. Late at night. Su Xiaoma removed the fish's scales and internal organs. Then, he skewered the face-slapping fish and roasted it over the fire. Xia Shuiyun sat cross-legged and cultivated as usual. During this time, with the help of the medicine soup and mental cultivation method, her meridians had almost recovered. Senior sister, the fish is ready. Okay. Xia Shuiyun opened her bright eyes and took the roasted fish. Then, she said, my injuries are almost healed. We will return to the sect tomorrow. Okay. Su Xiaoma said dejectedly in a low voice, good times are always short. What are you mumbling about? Xia Shuiyun asked. Su Xiaoma said, I have been very happy these few days with Sister Xia. Xia Shuiyun rolled her eyes at him and said, don't talk about me being injured and recuperating here. Okay. The fish is well roasted. Thank you. The next day, Su Xiaoma and Xia Shuiyun returned to Taishianshengzong. What? Sect of All Times. After receiving the latest report, Jun Changshao said with a stunned face, Xiaomu and Xia Shuiyun were alone in a cave for 5 or 6 days. Yes. Li Luoqiu said. This kid is not bad, Jun Changshao said. Coincidentally, Elder Wei was also in the study. He smiled with satisfaction and said, Xiaomu's comprehension is still not bad. At this point, he subconsciously looked at the patriarch and muttered in his heart, "The difference is like heaven and earth." "Oh, right." Li Luoqiu said again. Xiaomu said that the reason Lu Qianqian was expelled was because she entered the ice spring to cultivate without the approval of the higher-ups. "It's that simple," Jun Changshao said. Li Luoqiu said. Xiaomu guessed that it might be the Taixien Shengzong's explanation. "There might be more to it. Tell him to pay more attention and not just flirt with girls." "Okay." After returning from Yinghui Mountain, Jun Changshao continued to focus on managing the sect and decided to personally participate in the disciple recruitment next month. This was because the current number of members had reached more than 48,000, and it was very close to breaking through 50,000. However, the outside world was a little chaotic. To be exact, the sect of all times, which had not shocked the world for a long time, once again swept the entire falling star continent with an explosive topic. All the sects are discussing important matters at Yinghui Mountain. The patriarch of the sect of all times is also there. I heard that he is arguing with the big shots. He almost rolled up his sleeves and took action. The deputy sect master of the Demon Emperor's Gate rushed over with 4 wusheng to cause trouble. In the end, he was beaten by Jun Patriarch until he couldn't stand up. According to the witnesses, Jun Patriarch used a strange martial skill at that time. He directly condensed some kind of illusion in midair. The power was quite explosive. There was also a guy with purple hair. Just by being naked, he intimidated 4 wusheng, making them not dare to move at all. Oh my god! This sect of all times hasn't made any movements recently. I thought that they had disappeared without a trace. I didn't expect that when the news came, it would still be so explosive. The matter of Jun Changshao acting pretentious at Yinghui Mountain was destined to become the topic of conversation after meals among the martial artists of the Falling Star continent. Of course. They were more concerned about when would the alliance of the major sects launch an attack on the Demon Emperor's Gate. Just as the martial artists of the entire continent were anxiously waiting, another piece of news came from the West Cloud State. The Demon Emperor's Gate had suddenly disappeared into thin air. The previous base was also empty. It can't be. After Jun Changshao received the news, he was speechless. I was still counting on you to fight against the famous righteous sections. In the end, after being beaten up by me, you directly retreated into the shadows? Although the Demon Emperor's Gate had disappeared, the masked men in black were still moving in the Jianghu. In just a few days, a few more sects had been destroyed. It was very obvious. This force had changed its strategy, from openly to secretly targeting the famous righteous sections. Bang! In a dark cave, an explosive sound could be heard, and a fist mark could be seen on the wall. Damn it! A boorish man clenched his fists in anger, and said, "Vice sect leader has been beaten to such a state, why are you still stopping us from finding trouble with the sect of all times?" "That's right." Ghost, who was leaning against a pillar at the side, said unhappily. Shadow said, "Vice sect leader has his own plans, we just need to listen to his orders." A boorish man's eyes were about to split open. "I can't take this lying down, I have to find trouble with this sect." Shadow frowned slightly and was about to dissuade him. Yin Jiu spoke first. Vice sect leader was seriously injured by Jun Changshao's palm strike. "Are you sure you are looking for trouble and not courting death?" A boorish man paused and said, "I can't beat the patriarch of the sect of all times, but I can beat the disciples of the sect of all times." "That's right." Ghost's eyes lit up, and said, "We can bully the disciples of the sect of all times. Without vice sect leader's orders, don't act recklessly." Shadow said. "Sigh." Ghost shrugged, and said, "I'm just saying." That night, Shadow discovered that Ghost and a boorish man had disappeared, so she frowned and said, "Those two fellows must have gone to find trouble with the sect of all times. I wish everyone a happy May Day. Looking for monthly votes and recommendation tickets at the end of the month." Chapter 942. Outside Ironbone Town. thousands of young boys and girls gathered and looked up at the Ironbone Mountain that seemed to be hidden in the clouds. Their eyes were shining with excitement. Today was the day the Sect of all times recruited disciples. They came from afar in hopes of passing the test and becoming a member of the Sect. Taiju, a middle-aged man with wrinkles all over his face, said, "Father believes that you will succeed." Judging from his appearance, he was not from a rich family. A 17 or 18-year-old boy standing in the group took a deep breath and clenched his fists tightly. He said to himself, "Father, your son will not let you down." Zhou Taiju. People from the eastern Haozhou. They were all ordinary people for generations. This time, accompanied by his father, he came to the Sect of all times from afar in hopes of passing the test and becoming a disciple to bring honor to his ancestors. There were many ordinary young men like him. They did not have any cultivation path. If they wanted to stand out in a world where martial arts were respected, they could only choose to enter a sect. However, for many people, a sect was too high to reach. They could only enter if they were extremely talented. However, the Sect of all times was different. As long as you had a skill, as long as you had some achievements in a certain area, you would have a chance to become a disciple. Therefore, on the day of recruitment, many young men gathered in Ironbone Town. Even if they might not pass the test, they were willing to give it a try. Tisk, the young man in embroidered clothes, said lightly, "These poor people dare to sign up. Who gave them the courage?" As a direct descendant of a large family, he felt very embarrassed to participate in the test with a group of country bumpkins. Another direct descendant of a family standing next to him said in annoyance, "The Sect of all times should have divided the test in advance. Those with status and those with status will be tested, and those without status and those without status will be tested." "That's right," someone agreed. Those young men who were born poor could only pretend that they did not hear what the young masters said, even though they were very angry. Whoosh! At this moment, a stream of light flew down from Ironbone Mountain and stopped at the foot of the mountain. "He can fly. This is Wu Huang." The young men's eyes were filled with strong admiration. However, when the light dissipated, a handsome young man in white clothes was revealed. They exclaimed in unison, "Jun Patriarch." That's right. It was Jun Gosheng. Perhaps it was because he had too much free time, but the disciple recruitment that the Ning brothers were supposed to be in charge of was personally overseen by him today. Shua! Jun Changshao pointed at the brocade-clothed youngster and the other family members, beckoning them over. "You guys, come out." The 4 examinees were stunned, but they still walked out from the group. "Where are you from?" "The He clan of the southeast. The Ling family of the southeastern province." Southeast First State, the 4 of them reported their identities. When the youths who also came from the southeast heard this, their expressions changed drastically. They thought to themselves, "They're all direct descendants of big clans." Jun Changshao said, "Your identities are not simple. In order to distinguish you from the ordinary contestants, I have decided to give you a separate assessment." Individual assessment? The 4 of them were startled at first, but then their eyebrows danced in delight. "That's right. We are all direct descendants of influential clans. Coming to the Sect of all times to register for the assessment, we have to be different from a bunch of country bumpkins. Turn around." Shua! The 4 of them turned around at the same time. Jun Changshao pointed in the direction of Strongbone Town and said, "Follow this road. The assessment point is at the end." Yes. The 4 of them started walking. The brocade-clothed youngster came back to his senses and said with a puzzled face, "Jun Patriarch, the end of this road is outside the borders of southwest Yangzhou." "That's right." Jun Changshao said, "It's outside the borders." Ha! The other 3 martial artists were dumbfounded. The assessment point was too far away. The brocade-clothed youngster's mouth twitched and said, "Jun Patriarch, don't talk nonsense." Jun Changshao interrupted forcefully and said with a sullen face, "Let's go quickly. We'll miss it if we're late." Shua! Shua! The 4 of them hurriedly moved. Jun Changshao shouted, "Run as fast as you can." Yes. The four of them took big strides and ran wildly on the wide road that extended beyond the borders. Jun Changshao retracted his gaze and looked at the examinees present. He said seriously, "The sect of all times doesn't care about your identity or status. Since you're here to participate in the assessment, we'll treat you all equally." Some of the smarter examinees heard this and immediately understood that the direct descendants of the clans who were running along the road were not going to take the assessment individually. They were directly disqualified. The assessment begins. Jun Changshao said loudly, "Only those who reach the top of the mountain within the stipulated time will pass the first round of the assessment." The examinees' eyes burned with passion. They had prepared for a long time for this day. Only by reaching the top of the mountain could they prove themselves. Jun Patriarch. Just as the examinees were eager to give it a try, a voice suddenly came from the back of the group. "I heard that the disciples of your sect are very strong. I'd like to experience it for myself." Oh? Jun Changshao looked over and saw that the speaker was a muscular man. He frowned and said, "So you're not here to participate in the assessment, but to challenge the sect of all times?" "You can say that." That person walked forward from the back of the group. Every step he took would cause the surrounding dust to fly up. It was obvious that he was a hidden expert. Interesting. Go Xing smiled. Thinking about it, it seemed that no one had dared to challenge them for a long time. The muscular man smiled and said, "Today is the day that your sect is recruiting disciples. I'm here to challenge you. Jun Patriarch won't refuse, right?" "Why would he?" Suddenly, another voice came from the side. "The sect of all times is one of the top 3 factions. Furthermore, you won the championship in the Dragon Tiger battle. If you refuse in front of everyone, it will definitely damage your reputation." The person who spoke was a tall and slender man. That's right. These two were one of the 4 great protectors of the Demon Emperor's Gate, a boorish man and ghost. They couldn't stand the fact that their vice-sect master was beaten up, so they secretly came to the sect of all times. Coincidentally, they were recruiting disciples, so they decided to openly challenge them. If they beat up the disciples of the sect of all times in front of everyone, it would definitely be very interesting when the news spread throughout the Starfall continent. That's right. Jun Changshao smiled and said, "The sect of all times warmly welcomes everyone to challenge us." A boorish man stopped in front of everyone and grinned. "If that's the case, Jun Patriarch, please call your disciples out. I'll be waiting for them there." He pointed to the arena in the distance and said. Jun Changshao said, "This is the arena of life and death set up by the sect of all times. As long as you walk up there, your life and death will be up to fate." "That's even better. You can fight to your heart's content," Ghost said. Jun Changshao immediately understood that these 2 guys weren't here to challenge him. They were here to cause trouble. TSK. Were their brains kicked by a donkey? How dare they come looking for a beating? Please wait a moment. Since there were people coming to challenge him on the day of recruitment, Jun Changshao definitely wouldn't refuse. A boorish man added, "Jun Patriarch, it's best if you call a few more disciples. I'm afraid I won't be able to fight to my heart's content." "All right." Jun Changshao said, "I'll satisfy you." Voice transmission at everyone. Qingyang, Sinful Self, Xingqian, Wudi, Ziyang, go down the mountain to receive the guests. Chapter 943. Back then, when the god-slaughtering palace brought a large number of evil sects to fight, Jun Changshao built a life and death arena at the foot of the mountain. At this moment, at the edge of the arena stood thousands of youths, their eyes shining with anticipation. They were originally here to participate in the entrance examination, but they didn't expect someone to come and challenge them. They could use this opportunity to see how strong the disciples of the sect of all times were. Buzz! Streams of light appeared around the arena and then gradually disappeared. Patriarch Zhen Dejuan said, "It has already been reinforced. Even if a semi-sage attacks it, it will not collapse. Yes. Jun Changshao looked at a boorish man and ghost, and laughed. Are you guys prepared to fight 2 against 2, or 1 against 1? Is it okay to fight 1 against many? A boorish man grinned. Damn it. This guy was very arrogant. Jun Changshao said, if you think that you can beat my sect of all times by yourself, then it doesn't matter. A boorish man said, after all, this is your sect's territory, and there are so many people watching, so I naturally have to give Jun Patriarch face. Let's fight 1-on-1, but first, you must send your strongest disciple. I'm afraid I won't be able to fight to my heart's content. Don't worry. Jun Changshao said seriously, I will definitely let you fight to your heart's content. Shwa! Shwa! At this moment, the core disciples of the sect of all times led by Li Qingyang all flew down from the mountain. They're all disciples participating in the dragon-tiger battle for hegemony. And Yi Xingchen. He's much more handsome than on the screen. When many girls saw the cold and arrogant Yi Xingchen, they were so excited that they almost screamed. From this, it could be seen that the youths who came to the sect of all times to participate in the examination really wanted to stand out. A portion of the girls were probably just trying to be in the same sect as their idol. This also meant that after experiencing the dragon-tiger battle for hegemony and the Shifang suicide tower, Pei Aniu had become the sect of all times postcard. A boorish man and ghost were also sizing up the disciples of the sect of all times. Although their auras were not bad, their cultivation levels seemed to have just reached the king level. Disdain immediately appeared in their eyes. Patriarch. Li Qingyang asked in a low voice, what's the situation? These two. Jun Changshao pointed at a boorish man and ghost and said, come challenge the sect of all times. Challenge? Xiao Ziji, Li Fei, and the others were stunned. Especially when he looked at a boorish man and ghost, it was as if he was looking at idiots. Judging from their auras, these two people should be emperor-level martial artists. However, their strength was definitely not on par with the profound-level martial artists of the planar battlefield. Wasn't taking the initiative to challenge just asking for a beating? Jun Patriarch. A boorish man crossed his arms and said with a look of disdain, sending only these few people is not enough. Li Qingyang, Xiao Ziji, and the others were speechless. It was probably because of the hidden cultivation technique that he thought they were weak. Whether it's enough or not, we'll only know after we fight, Jun Changshao said. You two, please choose your opponents. A boorish man began to look carefully. Suddenly, he realized that one of the disciples of the sect of all times was staring coldly at him. There was obvious contempt in his eyes. He pointed and said, it's him. Who? Stars and clouds scatter, sun and moon take place. Sigh. Li Qingyang and Xiao Ziji both sighed. First, they were depressed because they were not chosen. Second, they were mourning for that guy. If you challenged us, you'd just be beaten up. If you challenged junior brother Yi, you'd better be prepared to have your dignity trampled on. Jun Changshao looked at Ghost and said, what about you? Ghost rubbed his chin and thought for a while. Then, he looked at Xiao Ziji and said, it's him. Let's go to the arena, Jun Changshao said. Jun Patriarch. A boorish man said, I didn't come here to challenge you to a fight and then leave. So, please call for more disciples who can take a beating. Ta! Yi Xingchen stepped onto the arena first and said calmly, you chose me. You're destined to fight only one battle. Is that so? A boorish man grinned. Then, he leaped onto the arena, which was reinforced by a formation. A thick aura immediately erupted. It was obvious that this person was very good at shaping his body. Xingchen, today is the day of disciple recruitment. Don't waste too much time. Make it quick, Jun Changshao said. Understood. Yi Xingchen stared at a boorish man from beginning to end. He judged what kind of martial artist he was from his aura and body. In his mind, he instantly came up with a method to beat him up 1,000 times. Director Li could use his mind to create a 3D building model. Yian could simulate all kinds of torture methods. The disciples of the sect of all times were all geniuses. "Let's begin," Jun Changshao announced. Bang! As soon as he said that, a boorish man clenched his fists. His shirt suddenly exploded, revealing his solid muscles. The youths were stunned. Not only were his muscles well developed, but he also had many scars. In particular, there were dozens of scars on his back. It was obvious that he had gone through unimaginable trials of life and death. A boorish man said proudly, "To be able to achieve what I have today, I've gone through countless trials of life and death. Have you guys with soft skin and tender flesh experienced it before?" Martial artists who had reached the level of emperor could rely on spiritual energy to heal the scars on their body. A boorish man had never done so. He mainly used it to show off. The effect was very good. The youths who had not experienced much were deeply shocked by the scars on his body. "Children, I'll tell you today that a true martial artist can only become strong after going through trials of life and death," a boorish man said loudly. Whoosh! As soon as he finished speaking, a large hand formed by spiritual energy pressed down from above. The force it carried was like a tsunami. Not good. Boom! An explosive sound came from the arena, and the spiritual energy spread out in all directions. Fortunately, Zhen Dejuan had used the array in advance. Otherwise, the entire arena would have been reduced to nothingness by this palm. The youths were standing far away, but they felt the remaining power sweeping over. They retreated dozens of steps in horror and then looked at the arena together. They saw that the guy who was covered in scars as if he was in a class with them was lying on the ground with a ferocious expression. Ghost, who had been smiling all the time, saw his companion being beaten down by a palm. His smile froze. Impossible. A boorish man was a fourth-class Wu Huang, and his body was very strong. Even if he was facing a fifth-class or sixth-class emperor, it was impossible for him to be beaten down directly. Shwa! Yi Xingqian strode over. Dense spiritual energy condensed in his fist. He said coldly, "Have you ever died?" A boorish man had never died. Because if he had died, he would not have appeared here. However, the Knight the Arch had died once, and he had truly experienced death. Therefore, what right did he have to talk about experiencing life and death in front of him? What right did he have to show off in front of him? Boom! 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 Violent power spread crazily in the arena. Waves of water rippled crazily. The corners of the youths' mouths twitched. Li Qingyang and Xiao Ziji could not bear to look and turned their faces away. After 10 minutes of crazy violence, Yi Xingqian finally stopped. The arrogant boorish man was lying on the arena. There were many fractures all over his body. His face was deformed. He had completely fainted. Of course. There were also benefits. There were many more scars on his body. He could show off in front of others better. Bang! After kicking the half-dead boorish man down, Yi Xingqian looked at Ghost, who was in a daze, and said coldly, "Get up here." Chapter 944. It was Ghost who instigated him to come to the Sect of all times. It was also Ghost's idea to use the recruitment day to issue a challenge. In his opinion, the Sect of all times would definitely accept the challenge. After all, they had a lot of prestige in the pugilistic world. That's right. Jun Changshao would not reject any challenge. As long as they dared to come, he would accompany them. Everything was under Ghost's control. He was also happily thinking that once he beat up the Sect of all times disciple and spread the news, it would definitely embarrass the sect. This guy also knew that Jun Changshao was very strong. If he challenged him, it would definitely be a tragedy. Since he couldn't directly help the vice sect master take revenge, he could only start with the disciple and cause the Sect of all times reputation to fall. But when a boorish man was beaten down and then ravaged crazily, the plan and plot that was under his control suddenly went awry. "Get up here," Yi Xingqian said coldly. "God, So handsome. I really hope to become a Sect of All Time's disciple immediately. Many girls clasped their hands together and looked at Yixingchen, who was acting like a domineering CEO. Ghost, who was standing below the stage, was already drenched in cold sweat. A boorish man was being beaten to the point that he couldn't fight back. Although he was stronger than him, he was only slightly stronger. If he went up, he would definitely be beaten up. This guy finally understood that coming to the Sect of All Times was to be beaten up. Ghost really wanted to leave now, but it was already too late. The other party had come out to receive the guest. Calm down, calm down. Ghost took a deep breath and looked at Xiao Ziji. I didn't choose you. I chose him. Yixingchen couldn't be provoked, but this guy could. Junior brother Yi. Xiao Ziji said, he's mine. Trash. Yixingchen said coldly and then walked down the stage. Please. Xiao Ziji cupped his hands and said. Seeing Yixingchen walk down, Ghost completely relaxed. He then jumped into the arena and thought to himself, the opponent I chose has the same heavy aura as a boorish man. He should be a cultivator of the physical body. As long as I'm fast enough, I should be able to finish him off easily. He was smart enough to choose his opponent after careful consideration. Unlike a boorish man, when he saw Yixingchen looking down on him, he chose him without hesitation. Shua! Xiao Ziji jumped up. Let's begin, Jun Changshao said impatiently. Originally, he thought that a boorish man had some strength, but in the end, he was easily defeated by his disciple. Therefore, he was not interested in the following battle. It was better to end it early and continue with the business of recruiting disciples. Shua! 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 On the stage, Ghost displayed his movement technique and instantly transformed into a dense mass of black shadows. Xiao Ziji stood in place, unmoving like a mountain. Whoosh! At this moment, Ghost seized the opportunity and suddenly jumped behind Yixingchen. A gloomy aura appeared in his right palm and he suddenly attacked. Bang! Xiao Ziji did not dodge and let the opponent hit his back. He then stood there motionlessly. This, Ghost's eyes were filled with astonishment. Your strength is too weak. Be stronger. Xiao Ziji said. Damn it. Ghost displayed his movement technique and retreated several steps. Then, his right hand quickly formed a seal and condensed an even stronger energy to attack. Bang! 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 The three powerful palms all hit Xiao Ziji's back, but the opponent was still as steady as Mount Tai. He said with dissatisfaction, "Can you be a bit stronger?" Ghost's mouth twitched. This palm technique was definitely his killer move. Moreover, after 3 consecutive attacks, Yixingchen did not retreat at all. This hurt his pride a bit. This person can't dodge. This means that his physical body is strong but his speed is weak. Even if he can withstand it, he will be nothing more than a punching bag. Ghost analyzed the situation and came up with a plan. If 1 or 2 attacks were not enough, then he would do it a few more times. Shua! Shua! Displaying his movement technique, black shadows crisscrossed. At that moment, Ghost perfectly displayed his advantage of being fast. Sometimes, he would dodge left and right. Sometimes, he would jump up and down. The boy and girl were so shocked that their mouths gradually opened. They even wondered if they had seen a ghost. Bang! Bang! The sound of explosions could be heard frequently. In a short period of time, Ghost relied on his movement technique to find Xiao Ziji's flaws and constantly attacked him. After dozens of attacks, he stood at the edge of the stage, panting. He held his head and roared, "Why is he not affected at all?" After attacking so many times, he had consumed a lot of spiritual energy. However, the opponent was still standing there like a mountain. That feeling was really despairing. Sigh. Xiao Ziji turned around and said, "Your strength is only so high. I stood there and let you hit me for so long." Bullshit. Ghost roared, "You obviously can't dodge." Whoosh! Before he finished speaking, a strong spiritual energy suddenly exploded in front of him. He saw Xiao Ziji appear in front of him in a stride. His right hand condensed a strong earth element power and suddenly blasted it. Ghost's pupils suddenly shrank. It's over, bang! Xiao Ziji's punch came. The speed and strength of the punch were like a cannon, and it directly hit Ghost's chest. The camera slowed down infinitely. First, the opponent's expression slowly changed. Then, his feet slowly left the ground and his body flew backward in a half bow. Boom, the camera returned to normal. Ghost flew out of the arena with a whoosh. Then, after smashing through more than a dozen trees, he fell like a puddle of mud several hundred meters away. His chest was dented with a fist mark, and he fainted on the spot. He couldn't afford to offend Yi Xingchen. He also couldn't afford to offend Xiao Ziji. He couldn't afford to offend any of the core disciples of the sect of all times. Men. Jun Changshao said, put these two guys in jail. Yes. Li Fei, Long Xiang, and the others carried the half-dead boorish man and Ghost, then flew to the sect of all times. Sai Ying, who was hiding in the distance, saw the two of them being captured and thought to herself, this is the result of courting death. When she rushed over, boorish man and Ghost had already issued the challenge, so it was too late to stop them. She could only hide in the dark and watch. Ying wasn't surprised at all by this result. After all, the vice sect master had repeatedly warned her not to provoke the sect. They must be strong. Whoosh! Ying didn't stay for long and quietly left to deliver the news. But just as she turned around, she saw a cold woman in white standing on a tree in front of her. Since you're here, don't go back, Lu Qianqian said lightly. Although Ying was a little surprised that she was discovered, she calmed down and smiled. Can you stop me? Whoosh! She used an unfathomable movement skill and flew over from the other side. Whoosh! 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 However, a strong cold air quickly spread from behind and stuck to his body, forming specks of frost, causing his speed to be greatly reduced in an instant. Ying's expression changed slightly. Just as she was about to circulate her spiritual energy to dispel the chill around her, a sword flashed, and then she raised her hands and landed on the ground. Lu Qianqian held her sword to her neck and said, I can. Further away. Seeing that Ying was also captured, Yin Jiu shook his head and said, Girl, although you have the ability to come and go without a trace, you're too close to the sect of all times. It's normal for you to be discovered. Sigh. I'll go back and deliver the news. Boom, there was an explosion, and the ground suddenly sank into a deep pit. Yin Jiu rolled his eyes and fainted in the center area. He Woody slowly descended from the sky and said with his mouth twitching, this guy is so weak. Wild wave is a kind of attitude. Wild wave is not restrained, creak. When Zhao Daodu sang emotionally, the prison door suddenly opened, so he quickly shut his mouth and said, we have new cellmates? Plop. 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 A boorish man, Ghost, and Yin Jiu were thrown over. Tsk, tisk. Zhao Daodu walked over and saw that they had all fainted, so he said sympathetically, you were tortured quite badly. Brother. He waved at Dai Lu, who was facing the wall, and said, come and welcome our new cellmates. Chapter 945. Of the 4 protectors of the Demon Emperor's Gate, 3 of them were locked up in the men's prison with Zhao Daodu and Dai Lu. The last one was locked up in the women's prison with the 9 Poison Temple's palace master. A boorish man and Ghost ended up like this, which could be considered as them reaping what they sowed. But Shadow and Yin Dove were also caught, which was a bit like being unjustly implicated. To be exact. It was all because of their pig teammates. Especially Ghost. Why did he say that? Because when he fought with Xiao Ziji, whether it was his movement or palm technique, they all contained an evil aura, which made it easy for Jun Changshao to determine that he might be a demonic cultivator. Thinking about how he had just beaten up the Demon Emperor's Gate's Vice Gate Master not long ago, and now there was a demonic cultivator pretending to challenge him. There must be some relationship between the two. I've sinned. During the battle, Jun Changshao transmitted his voice, "Take care of this guy with one punch." Yes. Xiao Ziji received the Patriarch's order, no longer being a punching bag. He used his full speed and strength and directly took care of Ghost. If the two were sent by the Demon Emperor's gate, then there might be other companions hiding in the dark, so Jun Changshao ordered Lu Qianqian and the others to pay more attention. In the end, they really caught two more. Don't be afraid of a godlike opponent, but be afraid of a pig-like teammate. Words of wisdom. Yuan Gongzi. Jun Changxiao's gaze was cold. You're challenging my bottom line again. If the Demon Emperor's gate's vice-gate master who was lying on the sickbed knew about this, he would definitely spit out 3 liters of blood. Jun Patriarch, this matter has nothing to do with me, they went there without permission. Patriarch. Li Qingyang walked into the main hall. How should we deal with these 4 people? Jun Changxiao said, I was just worried that I couldn't find the hiding place of the Darkness Sect. Now that they've taken the initiative to deliver their heads to me, I naturally have to. With a cold expression, he said, interrogate them with torture. He seemed to be neutral in the matter between the Demon Emperor's gate and the righteous sects, but in reality, he was searching for the Darkness Sect's base while the two sides were fighting. In the past, Jun Changshao had ambushed the disciples of the sect many times. Naturally, he would not let the matter rest. However, the Darkness Sect had been hiding for many years. Since they dared to stand in the open with the identity of the Demon Emperor's gate, they definitely had nothing to fear. Even if they mobilized the power of their sects to wipe them out, they might be replaced by the Demon Monarch faction or Demon Monarch Palace. To deal with this kind of power, as long as he attacked, it had to be fatal. The Drizzle Hall's intelligence network was already in full operation. Jiangya was searching for clues all over the world. As long as the Demon Emperor's gate continued to cause trouble with the righteous sects, they would be exposed sooner or later. This was also why the vice-sect master of the Demon Emperor's gate, who could have easily killed him at Reflection Mountain, had let him go. Because the other party might only be one of the leaders. Killing him would have no effect, and it might even make the other party more vigilant. Jun Changshao pretended to be a neutral party. You guys kill by yourselves, I'll be in charge of watching the show. In reality, I'll be in charge of the overall situation in the dark. I'll wait until I find the Darkness Sect that had repeatedly targeted me. Then, I'll use Arya's sexy leather whip to whip them. Now. Catching 4 demonic cultivators was definitely a good opportunity. Did you take away the things they used to commit suicide? Jun Changshao asked. Li Qingyang said, Patriarch's foresight is godly. These people hid poison in their mouths, sleeves, and boots. This disciple fed them to the goats. After eating, they immediately died. It's not surprising that a death warrior would do such a thing. Jun Changshao said. Patriarch. Lu Wancher walked in and wiped his tears. The few goats that disciple raised suddenly all died for no reason. Li Qingyang was silent, he quietly retreated, and then disappeared like the wind. Ah! Lu Wancher chased out of the hall with a kitchen knife and roared loudly, Second senior brother, you dare to poison my goats. In the cell. Zhao Daodu placed one leg on the bed and said, seeing how the 3 of you were tortured so miserably, you must have offended the sect of all times to death. As the number 1 prisoner, he had experienced a lot of fellow prisoners. As long as he was injured when he entered, he would be able to deduce a few things. However, Zhao Daodu said, don't worry too much, from my experience, as long as the sect you represent pays enough ransom, you will definitely be politely released. You might even be given a meal. He was talking about the captured semi-sage of the world-defying sacred sect and the Haoguang sacred sect. I'll tell you. The food of this sect of all times is simply delicious. If you can be redeemed, as long as you can eat a meal, it will definitely not be a loss. Of course. There's another possibility, which is to be recruited and surrendered. From my experience, if you guys aren't the kind of people who are unyielding, it's best for you to quickly surrender, because back then, There was a guy with purple hair who was very hard and was dragged out to be beaten up every day. In the end, he couldn't take it anymore and surrendered. Tell me, isn't he just suffering? The most tragic thing is someone like me. No one has any money to redeem me, and I don't want to surrender. I've been locked in a cell for at least 2 or 3 years. No, I'm afraid it's been 4 or 5 years. Zhao Daodu said as he wiped his tears. Little brat. Ghost, who had already woken up but had his chi meridians sealed and was severely injured, laid on the ground and grimaced. You. If you continue to be noisy. Believe it or not, I'll kill you right now. After becoming a prisoner, he didn't even have the chance to die, which made him very annoyed. Now that there was a chattering fellow beside him, he was about to collapse. Compared to the 3 of them, Shadow was much happier. In the cell that was locked up, there was only a stern 9-poison temple palace master. Although the room was filled with spiders and scorpions, as a devil cultivator, he was naturally not afraid. Baldy. Zhao Daodu looked at Dai Lu, who seemed to be facing a wall, and earnestly advised, Jun Patriarch advised you to enter the sect many times, why are you so stubborn? I am Dai Lu. Even if I die, I won't enter the sect of all times. So. Zhao Daodu raised his thumb and said in admiration, you are the most unyielding man I have ever seen in prison. Creak. At this moment, the door of the cell opened. Zhao Daodu quickly jumped down from the bed and hid in the corner. According to his experience, since a new prisoner was locked up, the sect of all times would definitely come to interrogate him. Sure enough. Jun Changshao walked in from outside and waved to the accompanying disciples. Shua! Li Fei and Tian Qi strode forward and hung up the heavily injured a boorish man and the other 2 with iron chains. The 3 of you. Jun Changshao sat down and laughed, be lenient if you confess, be strict if you resist. A boorish man tried his best to raise his head and said, We don't know anything, and we won't say anything. If you want to torture us, then give up. Is that so? Jun Changshao really didn't believe it, so he waved his hand and said, treat the 3 of you well. Yes. Li Fei and Tian Qi clenched their fists and walked over. Just as they were about to make a move, Yao Menjing appeared at the door of the cell and said, Patriarch, can I interrogate them? She heard from Lu Wancher that the sect had captured 4 demonic cultivator and hurriedly rushed over. Little junior sister. Li Fei said, it's better to leave the interrogation of prisoners to the senior brothers. Jun Changshao held his chin and said, this girl is also a demonic cultivator, it seems like it's not bad to let her interrogate the demonic cultivator. Demonic cultivator? A boorish man and ghost tried their best to turn their necks to look at the door. Until they met Yao Menjing's eyes, their souls seemed to have suffered a heavy blow, and their hands and legs began to tremble uncontrollably. This scene was noticed by Jun Changshao. Girl. I'll leave the 3 of them to you. Yes. Yao Menjing walked in and said, 2 senior brothers, please let them go. Hua hua hua. The iron chains were pulled away. Plop. Plop. The untied a boorish man and ghost directly knelt on the ground, their weak faces filled with fear and trepidation, as if they were very afraid of this little girl who suddenly appeared in the cell. Chapter 946. A boorish man and ghost were heavily injured, and their meridians were sealed. It was understandable that they were paralyzed on the ground, but it was inconceivable that they were kneeling on the ground. Zhao Daodu was stunned. The 3 brothers were hung up, and the determination in their eyes made him think that they were pure men like Dai Lu. He didn't think that they would be scared so quickly. Or, was the girl who came in very strong? Zhao Daodu sneaked a glance and found that although Yao Menjing was very cute, there was nothing special about her. He couldn't help but think, could it be that these 3 brothers were persuaded by me? Instead of fighting to the end, why don't they just surrender? Because the little girl has the innate demon body and can invisibly intimidate demonic cultivators? Jun Changshao guessed. Yao Menjing walked over and stood in front of the three kneeling people with her hands behind her back like a supreme ruler. She said, "Who gave you the courage to come to my sect of all times to cause trouble? Little junior sister is very cool." Li Fei thought. Boer, Gui Mei and the other two did not dare to raise their heads as they knelt on the ground, trembling. Yao Menjing didn't release her cultivation, but her body emitted a supreme majesty that only they could feel. The pressure was so great that they didn't even dare to breathe. Speak. Plop. Plop. A boorish man and the other two were so shocked that they directly collapsed on the ground. Zhao Daoda's mouth twitched. This girl's voice was clearly very sweet. How did it scare them to this extent? Little girl. Jun Changshao transmitted his voice, "Ask them who they are first." Okay. Yao Menjing said with a cold face, "Who are you? What sect are you from?" A boorish man and ghost were fiercely struggling, but the fear that came from the depths of their souls forced them to speak in unison, We are from the Demon Emperor's Gate." "Where is the Demon Emperor's Gate?" In the Dusky Crow Mountain Range." The three wanted to keep their mouths shut, but their minds were always under the supreme pressure, so they could only choose to confess. Dusky Crow Mountain Range? Jun Changshao thought, one of the three forbidden areas? There were many forbidden areas in the Starfall continent, and the three most terrifying ones, the Dusky Crow Mountain Range was one of them. The Dusky Crow Mountain Range was dark, and there were vicious beasts everywhere. There was even miasma that blocked spiritual sense. Even Wu Huang would be lost if he entered. Exact location, Yao Menjing said, We. The fuck? Jun Changshao muttered to himself, so awesome. It's not easy for you to have your current cultivation. My patriarch is virtuous. Will you submit to him? Yao Menjing asked. Jun Changshao was stunned. He asked the first question, but he didn't say this. The little girl was very perceptive now. Not bad, not bad. A boorish man and ghost's faces became ferocious. They were struggling in their hearts. Obviously, they were very resistant to submitting to Jun Changshao. Answer me. Yao Menjing's eyes flashed with a strange light. It was as if she had turned into the great hero from 10,000 years ago who dared to fight against heaven and earth and the sun and moon. A boorish man and the other two were so scared that they fell to the ground. Every hair on their bodies stood on end. This girl's aura was too terrifying. It made them feel like they were at the top of a mountain. After going through the Demon Valley, Yao Menjing already had the potential of a demon emperor. The three pure demon cultivators would definitely be afraid of her. I submit. Hand over your soul origin. When Jun Changshao held the soul origin in his hand, he was a little surprised. He didn't expect the three of them to submit so quickly and so thoroughly. Of course. He also realized that Yao Menjing would have such a miraculous effect on demon cultivators. If I had known, I would have taken her to the West Cloud State to find the Demon Emperor's Gate. Then, I would have directly incorporated this force. Jun Changshao thought to himself. Patriarch. Yao Menjing smiled. There is still a woman in prison. I will go and persuade her. Go. Jun Changshao said. He didn't leave the cell. He looked at Dai Lu, who was facing the wall and reflecting, and said, Boy, have you thought it through? Dai Lu didn't say anything. Even if the three demon cultivators admitted defeat in front of him and never joined the sect of all times, their hearts were never shaken. All kinds of protagonist lives played out here again and again. Only Brother Green Scarf still unswervingly defended the unyielding spirit. Jun Patriarch. Zhao Daoda cried. I want to join the sect of all times. He had said this many times, but he was ignored every time. This time, Jun Changshao said, You have experience in prison. You can be considered a talent. Stay here and enlighten the prisoners. Inform the cafeteria to send 3 meals a day on time. Don't let him starve. Yes. Bring these 3 to Medical Peak and let Sun Bukong treat them. Yes. Creak. The cell door closed again. Zhao Daodu, who was curled up in the corner, looked dazed. He wasn't distressed by the loss of his 3 cellmates. Instead, after a moment, he began to dance and laugh. Previously, it was 1 meal a day. Now, it was 3 meals a day. Happiness. Stay here and enlighten the prisoners. Recalling what Jun Changshao said before he left, Zhao Daodu gradually calmed down and said, "Is he thinking highly of me?" Jun Patriarch. He stood up and said with a firm gaze, "I won't let you down. I will enlighten the prisoners." Baldy. Zhao Daodu appeared in front of Dai Lu and earnestly advised, "Jun Patriarch has been very kind to you. As a person, you must know how to be grateful. Don't force yourself. Quickly surrender to the sect of all times. Life is like a cup of tea. It won't be bitter for a lifetime, but it will be bitter for a while. As long as you have a good attitude and don't give up, no matter how far the road is, the bitter will be over and the sweet will be over." Ding! Chicken soup for the soul instructor Zhao Daodu has come online. Yao Menjing was very good at dealing with demonic cultivators. Not long after she entered the women's prison, she brought Shadow's soul origin to the main hall and said, "Patriarch, that woman has surrendered." Amazing! Jun Changshao gave her a thumbs up. Without Yao Menjing, who had the innate demonic body, it would be difficult to force the 4 demonic cultivators to surrender. "That's right, girl." Jun Changshao said, "The Demon Emperor's Gate's master has the innate demonic body. What do you think?" Yao Menjing said with certainty, "Only this disciple has inherited the innate demonic body. There will not be a second one in the world." Jun Changshao rubbed his chin and said, "In that case, this Demon Emperor's Gate deliberately lied to the outside world about the innate demonic body and then attracted all the demonic cultivators in the world." Patriarch. Yao Menjing said, "If you are going to the Dusky Crow Mountain Range, please bring this disciple." She was very curious about who had the guts to pretend to have the innate demonic body that only she had. "Yes." Jun Changshao nodded. Suddenly, a system notification sounded in his ears. Ding! Sect members, 500,005,0000. Ding! Sect mission activated. In the mission pavilion, a new sect mission appeared. It meant that as long as the disciple completed it, the sect could be upgraded. Hallmasterly Jun Changshao transmitted his voice, "Notify the certification center and have them send someone to certify the sect's grade." Chapter 947. Another certification. In the certification center, Yi Tianqing was shocked when he heard the news. It hasn't been long since they were promoted to the 4th rate. According to the time in the falling star continent, it had indeed not been long. "Elder Zhou, Elder Zhen." Yi Tianqing ordered, "Go ahead." "Yes." Elder Zhou and Elder Zhen left the Heavenly Mandate Imperial City and rushed to the Sect of all times. Especially when they thought about being able to eat Lu Wancher's cooking soon, they started drooling. After several certifications, the 2 of them could see that since the Sect of all times had applied again, they definitely had enough strength to pass. They were just going through the motions. The main point was that they could eat the delicious food of the world. If not for their status, the 2 elders would have liked to come to the Sect of all times every few days to eat. The next day, Elder Zhou and Elder Zhen arrived at the Sect of all times. When they saw the tall mountains, they were deeply shocked. They had been to this sect many times. Each time, there were different changes. This time, the changes were even more intense. They could even smell the heritage of a large sect. After the terrain modification, although the Sect of all times was still a 4th-rate sect, in terms of scale and environment, it was comparable to a 1st-rate or 2nd-rate sect. Of course, the top power was not weak either. After all, there were cultivators like the Purple King and Ding Xingwang, who were at the level of Wu Sheng. The core disciples, led by Li Qingyang, had all broken through to the level of Wu Huang. Not to mention that they could shake the entire continent with a stomp of their feet. At least in terms of overall strength, they were not inferior to second-rate or third-rate sections. This was just the beginning. As more disciples entered the peak of Martial King and obtained the Surge Talisman, they would enter the dimensional battlefield for practical experience. There would only be more and more Emperor-level cultivators. There were as many King-level cultivators as dogs, and Emperor-level cultivators were everywhere. This sarcastic remark might be foreseen in the Sect of all times. Both of you. Jun Gosheng smiled and said, do you want to be certified first or eat first? Eat. Elder Zhou and Elder Jin said in unison. In the past, they could resist the urge to be certified first. Now, they simply stopped pretending. Let's do it. Just for the food. Please. Lu Wancher personally cooked and prepared a table full of delicacies. After the two of them ate, their souls were sublimated. The sky became bluer, and the mountains became taller. Jun Patriarch. Elder Zhou said, let's get it verified. Please. Jun Changshao was the first to walk out of the cafeteria. Then, he gathered all the upper echelons and disciples of the sect and began the strength assessment. Jun Patriarch. After an hour of rigorous testing, Elder Zhou handed over a token with the words third-rate engraved on it and said, congratulations on your sect's promotion to a third-rate sect. Thank you. Jun Changshao took it. Ding! Congratulations to the host for upgrading the sect to third-rate. The reward is 10,000 achievement points and 10,000 contribution points. Ding! Sect contribution points, 39300500000. Ding! Sect achievement value, 22200500000. After hearing the notification, Jun Changshao opened the system panel. When he saw that the sect had been upgraded from 4th rate to 3rd rate, a bright smile appeared on his face. After many years of hard work, he had turned a 9th rate sect into one of the top 3rd rate sects in the Falling Star continent. He felt a sense of accomplishment. Beep! Beep! Jun Changshao yelled, let's have a banquet tonight to celebrate the sect's promotion to 3rd rate. All right. Lu Wancher led the cafeteria members and started to get busy. Swoosh! 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 In the kitchen, Ma Yongning and Lin Yao stood on opposite sides. They looked at each other and quickly pulled out their kitchen knives. Instantly, a crisscrossing light appeared. Swish! 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 Outside, Qian Budwa was working hard to clean the ingredients for the banquet. Although the process was a little boring, he was very happy doing it. The little guy had completely adapted to the life in the sect of all times. Every day, he would wake up before the rooster crows to clean the ingredients for his fellow sect members. My hands were born to wash vegetables. The cafeteria members were busy preparing for the banquet. Jun Changshao came to the medicine hall and greeted the 4 injured demon cultivators. He said it was a greeting. But it was actually a question. For example, what kind of force was the Demon Emperor's Gate? How many disciples did it have? How many strongholds did it have? A boorish man and the others, who had their soul origins controlled, could only tell the truth, although they were unwilling. Protector. Jun Changshao touched his chin and said, I don't have a position in the sect of all times yet. Under normal circumstances, a large sect had positions such as the Patriarch, Deputy Patriarch, Elder, Protector, Hall Master, and so on. The sect of all times currently only had elders and hall masters. Not to mention a protector, there wasn't even a deputy patriarch. A protector was obviously lower than an elder. In layman's terms, it was similar to a hired thug. A boorish man and ghosts group of 4 had such a position in the Demon Emperor's Gate. That was why they were the main force in the battle against the righteous sects in the West Cloud State. Once the upper limit of members is raised, I can consider letting the 4 of them become protectors of the sect of all times. Jun Changshao muttered. There weren't many demon cultivators in the sect. It wasn't a bad idea to take in a boorish man and the others. Patriarch. Li Luocha walked into the hall and said, Elder Jiang sent news that the Demon Emperor's Gate's base might be in the Dusk Crow mountain range. Although Jun Changshao had already heard about it from a boorish man and the others, he was still very confident that Jiang Ye could find this crucial information. Tell Elder Jiang not to enter blindly, Jun Changshao said. The reason why the Darkness Sect was a headache was because they were always hidden in the dark. Now that they knew the location of the stronghold, there was nothing to worry about. Demon Emperor's Gate. Jun Changshao leaned back in his chair and rubbed his fingers as he said with a smile, wait until this king and the entire sect have a good drink. Then, I'll look for you to have some fun. When the time comes, don't admit defeat. His smile was very scary. Night came. A bonfire flickered on the practice field, illuminating the surroundings. Rows of tables were placed side by side, filled with delicious food and wine. Open the wine. Pang pang pang. The seal was removed and the disciples filled the cups. Jun Changshao raised his cup and said, May our sect exist forever and live as long as the heavens. Exist forever and live as long as the heavens. Gulp. Gulp. All the disciples drank a bowl of wine. Junior brother Yi. Tian Qi said in surprise, Why aren't you drinking? Yi Xingqian said indifferently, not interested. Ha ha ha. Li Fei laughed, Junior brother Yi must be afraid. If you drink too much, you'll dance around the fire like last time. Night Emperor was very embarrassed about that matter. Hearing him say it, he wanted to flip the table. Junior brother. Li Fei came over with a bowl of wine and smiled, the sect becoming a third-rate sect is a joyous matter. You should drink some, right? Of course. If you're afraid of losing your composure, then I won't force you to drink. This was really touching a sore spot. Yan Yo was even angrier. He suddenly stood up and picked up a bowl of wine and said with a cold face, Drink. Come. Gulp gulp. Again. Come. Senior brother Yi and senior brother Li are fighting. All the disciples gathered around. Jun Changshao, who was sitting in front of the hall, saw Yi Xingqian being so wild and said happily, This Dan Sundara is changing bit by bit. But, he looked at Lu Qianqian, who was sitting alone at the table, and shook his head, she doesn't seem to have changed. Senior sister Lu. Yao Menjing rested her chin on the table and looked at her senior brothers drinking to their heart's content. She said pitifully, I want to drink too. Lu Wanshi, who also rested her chin on the table, said, Why wouldn't I want to? Sigh. In the prison, Zhao Daodu stood at the window and looked at the happy sect of all time's disciples outside. He said enviously, When can I join this happy and harmonious sect? Creak. The prison door opened. One black and two black brought in a few plates of delicious food and a jar of wine, and said, This is a reward from the sect. Thank you, thank you. Zhao Daodu quickly ran over and sniffed the food and wine. His soul immediately floated to the sky and stood shoulder to shoulder with Li Tianshang. Useless. Dai Lu, who had been facing the wall, stood up and sat in front of the table. He picked up his chopsticks and started eating. During this period, as long as someone brought food to him, he would eat it without hesitation. However, he wasn't tempted by the food and remained firm. Damn! You ate all the food again. The banquet didn't end until late at night. Yi Xingqian and Li Fei drank 2 jars of wine and then staggered back to their residence. The next day, they were found lying outside the outhouse. Chapter 948. Rustle, rustle, rustle. Rustle, rustle, rustle. In the dark forest, a group of people walked quietly. Soft rustling sounds came from the grass and trees. This was a group of warriors in battle robes and masks. Although they didn't emit any martial arts aura, judging from their actions, they must be first-class experts. Patriarch. A warrior walking in front stopped and transmitted his voice, Spiritual senses are restricted. I can only see within 2 feet. He could tell from the voice that it was Li Qingyang. Behind him were Lu Qianxian, Xiao Ziji, Li Fei, Tian Qi, He Wudi, and other core disciples. Where was Knight Emperor? He was also in the group. However, at this moment, he was screaming in his heart, "Why did I sleep outside the outhouse yesterday? Last time at the Sect's banquet, he drank too much and danced in front of the bonfire. Yesterday, he drank too much and slept outside the room. This was definitely a blow to his self-esteem." "No, no," Yi Xingqian said, "I won't touch a drop of alcohol in the future." In order to avoid any more stains, he immediately decided to quit drinking. Indeed. Jun Changshao sat on a tree and nibbled on an apple. Although the miasma here is not poisonous, it has the effect of isolating spiritual senses. Under the tree stood the Purple King, King of 100 Hills, Ding Xingwang, and Yao Menjing. The upper echelons and core disciples of the sect were all here. This meant that the area they were in now was the Dusk Crow Mountain that terrified the entire Falling Star continent. After taking down the 4 protectors of the Demon Emperor's Gate, the other party would definitely receive the news. Therefore, they went wild yesterday and brought their top forces to attack. "Elder Jiang," Jun Changshao said, "can you penetrate it?" "No." Jiang Ye shook his head. He had been waiting outside the Dusk Crow Mountain for a long time. He also tried to use his primordial spirit to spy, but when he extended it to the miasma area, it was suddenly separated by some force. The system said, "It is difficult for spiritual senses to spread in the miasma area. If the host wants to find the moving demon gate, it will be as difficult as ascending to heaven." "As difficult as ascending to heaven?" Jun Changshao said, "I don't believe it." Shwa! With a wave of his hand, he took out a compass-like treasure-searching tool and said, "The Demon Emperor's Gate must have many treasures. Perhaps we can use this to search for them." Buzz! His will entered the treasure-seeking tool, and it began to shine brightly. Whoosh! Whoosh! After a while, specks of light appeared one after another, and all of them gathered in a certain area. As expected, Jun Changshao was overjoyed. The treasure detector is not affected by the miasma. The system, it had long been accustomed to being slapped in the face at lightning speed as soon as it finished speaking. "Let's go." Jun Changshao led the group deeper into the cave according to the location given by the treasure finder. After walking for a while, the light spots suddenly changed and collectively appeared in the southeast. "Looks like it's time to activate the transfer function of the formation." The Demon Emperor's Gate was hidden in the Dusk Crow Mountain range, and it was supported by a formation that could be moved at any time. Even if others knew about it, it would be extremely difficult to find it inside. However, Jun Changshao, who had the treasure finder in his hands, did not care at all. "Because no matter how you move, as long as the sect's treasure is still there, I will always be able to find it." In the deepest part of the Dusk Crow Mountain range, there was a group of buildings. If Li Qingyang saw it, he would definitely be able to deduce the time of construction from the structure and color. At this moment, in a building that looked like a hall, there were dozens of masked men in black. Yuan Gongzi has always emphasized not to provoke the sect of all times, but in the end, he was injured by that Jun Changshao. He really brought this upon himself. An old man in black gloated. He had to push the sect out and openly fight with the famous righteous sections. What a stupid decision. Elder Han, in the previous meeting, you were very supportive of Yuan Gongzi's actions. Why are you suddenly opposing it now? As long as it's beneficial to the sect, this old man will agree. As long as it's harmful to the sect, this old man will oppose it. There was no one else who could describe both sides of the fence in such a refreshing and refined manner. All right. The man in black sitting closest to the main seat said, "This time, I gathered all of you here not to criticize Yuan Gongzi, but to discuss the next step." Very simple. Elder Han said, "Let the sect continue to hide in the dark and ambush those arrogant righteous sections. There's also the sect of all times." Someone said, "This old man thinks that we can continue to carry out the previous plan." The previous plan was to target the Sect of All Times and Jun Changshao, but it was later stopped by Yuan Gongzi. Now that the latter was at a disadvantage, it was naturally impossible to stop them. That purple-haired fellow was able to injure and intimidate Fu Wusheng. This means that the Sect of All Times has now become a force to be reckoned with. If we want to get rid of it, I'm afraid we'll have to pay a price. Therefore, Yuan Gongzi was completely wrong to stop us from targeting this sect. In an elegant courtyard, Yuan Gongzi sat in the pavilion with a pale face. He had not completely recovered from being hit by Jun Changxiao's palm. Young master, a martial artist said, Jiang Lingshan has called for an elders' meeting. They're definitely targeting you. Yuan Gongzi shook his head and said, these old fellows have been waiting to see me make a fool of myself. Now, they've seized the opportunity. Sigh. He sighed and said, it's also my fault for forcing Jun Changshao to become enemies with the righteous sects. In the end, I went for wool and came home shorn. Young master, that martial artist said, this old servant thinks that you're too afraid of this kid. If you had mobilized your forces to destroy this sect from the start, there wouldn't have been so much trouble. Destroy? Yuan Gongzi shook his head and said, a sect that can rise so quickly. If it didn't have a powerful trump card, it would have been destroyed long ago. Young master. At this moment, a black-clothed man walked in and said, Elder Jiang and the others have rejected your plan. They've decided to use force against the Sect of All Times. Yuan Gongzi clenched his fist and said, to be able to intimidate Fu Wusheng, the strength of the Sect of All Times is obvious to all. If these old fellows continue to provoke them, they'll undoubtedly push the sect into a bottomless abyss. Right now, he was very angry. If it weren't for a group of idiotic teammates who offended the Sect of All Times without permission, he might have reached an agreement with Jun Changshao back in Maple Valley and joined forces against the righteous sects. Young master, there's one more thing that this old servant needs to report to you. Speak. A boorish man and the others have lost contact. Lost contact? The black-clothed man said, after young master was injured by Jun Changshao, a boorish man and ghost left. They might have gone to the Sect of All Times to avenge you. What? Yuan Gongzi stood up abruptly. Because he used too much strength, he couldn't suppress his injuries and immediately spat out a mouthful of blood. He then said angrily, a bunch of useless fools. This old servant is wondering if we should go look for them. Yuan Gongzi suppressed his anger and supported himself on the stone table. How long has it been since we lost contact? 3 days. The black-clothed man said. Sigh. Yuan Gongzi sat down, his entire person haggard. He said, there's no need to look for them. They must have died in the Sect of All Times. Their soul life slips haven't shattered. Haven't shattered? Yuan Gongzi was startled. Could they have been captured by the Sect of All Times? The black-clothed man was about to speak when he heard a report. He said, Southwest Yangzhou sent the latest news. On the day of the Sect of All Times recruitment, a boorish man and ghost came to challenge them. They were brutally beaten by the Sect of All Times disciples, Yi Xingchen and Xiao Ziji. They were also brought up the mountain and never came down again. They really were captured. Yuan Gongzi said, they didn't even have the chance to commit suicide. Suddenly, he realized something and his expression changed. A boorish man and the others wouldn't have leaked the sect's location, right? These 4 were personally groomed by young master. They shouldn't have betrayed the sect, right? The black-clothed man said. No. Yuan Gongzi said, if it were any other sect, I believe that a boorish man and the others wouldn't have leaked the information. But this Jun Changshao might have a way to force it out. It doesn't matter even if he does. The black-clothed man said confidently, our sect is hidden in the Dusk Crow mountain range and has a teleportation formation. He definitely won't be able to find it. Yuan Gongzi's brows furrowed even tighter. He said, Jun Changshao can't be judged by common sense. Quickly inform the Elder Hall and have them raise their guard. If he really comes here, then, boom. Before he could finish speaking, a deafening roar suddenly came from outside the mountain gate. The originally invisible sect formation instantly appeared. Yuan Gongzi. I've specially come to pay a visit today. Hearing Jun Changxiao's voice, Yuan Gongzi sat on the stone bench and said with a dazed expression, "This guy really came here." Chapter 949. Outside the Demon Emperor's Gate. Field cannons were set up on high points, and smoke filled the air. The cannonball bombarded the area, and a light barrier gradually appeared. It meant that the Demon Emperor's Gate had a sect-protecting formation. This situation was very normal. Which powerful sect didn't have some protective measures? I've sinned. Jun Changxiao said, "Fire another cannon." He had fought with the Demon Emperor's Gate many times and could be considered an old friend. Since he had come from afar, it would be embarrassing if he gave him a greeting gift. Bang! A deafening sound came again. The cannonball, which carried a powerful force, once again smashed into the sect-protecting formation. Immediately, billowing smoke covered the sky. Caw caw caw. Suddenly, the sound of cracking could be heard. It was as if the ancient formation, which had existed for a long time, couldn't withstand the cannonball's bombardment and completely collapsed. Then, it turned into a sky full of light and disappeared with the wind. Patriarch. Xiao Ziji said in shock, using hexagram stones to make cannonballs is much more powerful than crystal cores. No wonder the two cannonballs were more powerful than the formation that bombarded the Scarlet Sea continent. It turned out that the energy was gathered from the spirit stones of the Nine Heavens continent. In order to leave a good impression on the Demon Emperor's Gate, Jun Gosheng had paid a big price for this visit. Swish! Swish! After the formation was broken, dozens of light beams flew out and hovered in front of the gate, glaring angrily. These people were the elders who had been talking in the main hall. TSK TSK. Jun Changxiao said, "Your sect has quite a few experts. Looks like you've been living in seclusion for thousands of years and have kept a low profile." More than 20 half-saints flew out, and Wusheng had at least 8 of them. Even the top sects of the Starfall continent might not be able to produce such a lineup. If placed in the planar battlefield, it would be very ordinary. Because many high-level continents could produce such a lineup, and they could even produce several of them. If he hadn't gone to the planar battlefield and experienced the crazy slaughter, Jun Changxiao might have panicked when he saw so many half-saints and Wusheng. But now, he could face them with a smile. Too little, too little. Give me more, then I'll be fired up. Shwa! Shwa! Another 100 disciples of the Demon Emperor's Gate appeared. Judging from their auras, the weakest among them was a martial king. There were also dozens of Wu Huang. Li Qingyang and the others remained expressionless. They, who had also experienced the slaughter of the planar battlefield, were completely unperturbed by such a small scene. However, there was one thing that couldn't be denied. With so many top forces and core forces, the Devil Emperor sect was truly powerful. No wonder he dared to go against the righteous sects. At this moment, the scene that appeared was of a few dozen people from the sect of all times led by Jun Changxiao facing off against nearly 100 high-ranking officials and disciples of the Demon Emperor's Gate. The air seemed to have frozen, and a murderous aura gathered around them. A great battle was imminent. Jun Changxiao. The Demon Emperor's Gate elder named Jiang Lingshan, who stood at the front, said in a low voice, "How did you find this place?" This was the most puzzling thing for him and the high-ranking officials. After all, the sect was hidden in the depths of the Dusk Crow mountain range, and there was a spell formation that moved at fixed times. Without a special method, finding it was like finding a needle in a haystack. How I found this place is no longer important. Jun Changxiao cupped his hands and said, "What's important is that I came here for only one purpose, and that is..." He paused, and with a cold gaze, he said, "To settle accounts." Whoosh! Whoosh! As soon as he finished speaking, the space suddenly rippled. 2 Wuxing-level Demon Emperor's Gate elders appeared out of thin air, and their withered hands, which carried a sky full of demonic aura, pressed down. They weren't from the righteous sects, and they paid a lot of attention before fighting. If they could get rid of their target as quickly as possible, they would definitely attack without hesitation. Boom! Boom! 2 explosions were heard, and the space was shaken to the point of distorting. The 2 Wusheng who suddenly launched a sneak attack were blasted away, and then they hung awkwardly in front of the sect gate, their eyes filled with astonishment. Jun Changshao was still standing with his hands behind his back. The Purple King and the King of 100 Hills, who were standing beside him, retracted their fists, and demonic aura spread out from their bodies, causing the area not only to be filled with demonic aura, but also a frightening evil aura. This, Jun Changshao said, another account. Jiang Lingshan said coldly, you've killed many people from my Demon Emperor's gate over the years, and this old man hasn't gone to your sect of all times to settle accounts. That's right. They had targeted the sect of all times before, but didn't they go for wool and come home shorn? If they were talking about settling accounts, the Demon Emperor's gate could list out a bunch of them. Whoosh! Whoosh! More and more Demon Emperor's gate disciples rushed out from the inner and outer courts, and the number gradually increased to 1,000, 2,000. Jun Changshao didn't expect that an organization that had been hiding in the dark all year round would have so many disciples, and from the aura they emitted, not only were they all demonic cultivators, but the lowest cultivation level was at least peak Wu zone. Go! Jiang Lingshan's eyes were cold. The sect of all times suddenly attacked and even broke the sect's protective array, and anyone with a temper couldn't stand it. Fight! This was a must. Whoosh! Whoosh! In an instant, the Demon Emperor's gate's higher-ups and disciples rushed out, and the demonic aura exploded, causing the space to distort violently. Clang! Clang! As they moved, Lu Qianxian, Li Qingyang, and the others drew their weapons, and their eyes flashed with strong fighting spirit. Although they had a lot of fun fighting in the dimensional battlefield, they didn't dare to go too far in the outer courts, but now that they were in their own home, they didn't have to care. Bang! At this moment, the purple craggy monster king tore off his clothes and rushed forward naked. He gathered purple energy in his hands and directly restrained the 5 martial sages who were flying toward him. 1 against 5. This was definitely Hall Leader Z's daily routine. Although the King of 100 Hills wasn't as strong as the Purple King, he also restrained 1 Wusheng, and the 2 sides instantly engaged in a fierce battle in midair. Boom! Boom! In a short period of time, the 2 sides exchanged dozens of blows, and the energy raged wildly, causing the space to collapse on a large scale. The Demon Emperor's gate was worried that the fight would affect the sect, and the Purple King and the King of 100 Hills were worried that Li Qingyang and the others would be affected, so both sides tacitly distanced themselves from each other. Die! At that moment, another martial saint stepped out of the void and attacked Jun Changshao. It was obvious that he wanted to capture the leader of the bandits. Kakik! Suddenly, a strange laughter came from behind. Ding Xingwang stealthily circled behind his back and unleashed his 5 ultimate palm imprints. Boom! 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 That demon cultivator Wusheng turned around awkwardly. Although he dissolved the attacks one by one, he was still entangled. Of the 8 Wusheng from the Demon Emperor's gate, 7 were targeted by the sect of all times higher-ups, and only Jiang Lingshan was left. Old man! Jun Changshao waved his hand and summoned Jade Dragon Asks the Heavens, saying, let's fight. Swoosh! He flew toward the sky at high speed. Jiang Lingshan sneered and chased after him with a burst of demonic energy. However, he also transmitted a message to the disciples of the Demon Emperor's gate, telling them to kill all the disciples of the sect of all times outside the gate. What a coincidence! Jun Changshao also transmitted a message, I'll leave these small fries to you. Yes! Li Qingyang, Xiao Ziji, and the others took out all kinds of equipment and got into various battle stances. The camera zoomed out, and their bodies seemed to be rapidly turning black, and their eyes gradually turned red, like demons that had been released from the seal of hell. The disciples of the Demon Emperor's gate who received the Elder's order were about to charge out in anger, But when they saw the terrifying eyes of the disciples of the sect of all times, they couldn't help but shudder. Chapter 950. The core disciples of the sect of all times were like demons that had been unsealed. The disciples of the Demon Emperor's Gate were so shocked that they couldn't help but tremble. To be exact, their morale had been suppressed even before the battle started. Kill! Kill! The 20 half-sages led the charge. They were amazed by the excellent equipment of the disciples of the sect of all times. However, their cultivation was higher, so they were naturally fearless. Junior brothers. Li Qingyang transmitted his voice. These people are too weak compared to the mystic-level experts. Just fight in your normal state. Okay. Everyone nodded with a smile on their faces. Although they had just entered Wu Huang's level, they had all kinds of equipment. They were really not afraid of the half-step Wusheng from the falling star continent. Whoosh! Whoosh! Suddenly, a blazing flame came from behind. Little Longlong activated its second form and flew over with a sky full of flames. Since its master and the higher-ups of the sect of all times were holding back Wusheng from the Demon Emperor's Gate, these half-sages would be left to it. Roar! Roar! The roars of spirit beasts came from the forest. The beasts led by Elder Nyo also rushed out. In this battle against the Demon Emperor's Gate, June Patriarch had not only brought the higher-ups and core disciples, but also the elites of the Spirit Beast Hall. If not for the limited space and environment, it was not impossible to escalate the small-scale battle into a large-scale battle with the various legions of the War Cavalry Hall. Therefore, when Jun Changshao decided to play seriously, the strength of the sect of all times could be shown. Settle the score. He was serious. Whoosh! 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 Little Longlong rushed over like a cannonball. The fiery energy wreaked havoc. The few half-sages at the front felt the irritation and heat, and their expressions changed greatly. Boom! Boom! Fiery fists rained down, filling the air. Whoosh! 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 Several half-sages staggered to meet the attack and were instantly sent flying. Their chests were all charred black, and their skin seemed to be torn apart. Boom! The half-saint at the front fell to the ground and spat out blood with a pale face. Suddenly, in his blurred vision, a little girl with bare feet walked over. She squatted in front of him and gently raised her small white hand. She smiled and said in a light voice, "Let me have you." The half-step saint was startled, and his pupils contracted. No, boom! Suddenly, an explosive sound came from the ground. Immediately, a deep pit with a radius of several feet appeared, and some feathers fluttered in the air. As for the half-saint who had been injured by the little dragon, his chest had caved in like an eagle's claw. His eyes were wide open, but he had already died. Shwa! Xiao Moxian stood up and turned to look at the Demon Emperor's Gate high up in the air, a brilliant smile on her face. Her smile was very cute. However, the half-saint who met his gaze was drenched in cold sweat. She was definitely a demoness. Hoo-hoo! Hoo-hoo-hoo! At this time, several half-sages rapidly approached. All sorts of energies erupted, hurtling toward Xiao Moxian. Who? The little dragon appeared behind her. His hands reached out from the flames and instantly blasted out dozens of palm prints, scaring away all of the half-sages. Then, he coldly said, "Woman, hurry up and screw off." You, Xiao Moxian angrily glared at him. Her feet touched the ground and she flew up. Her jade-like hands waved in the air, gathering feathers in the air and shooting forwards like hidden weapons. Pang! 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 Light flashed in the air. The high-level figures of the Demon Emperor's Gate were thrown into confusion. Although Jun Changxiao's two contract beasts didn't have the slightest bit of tacit understanding and liked to bicker with each other, in this brief exchange of blows the dozens of half-sages were deeply shocked by the might that erupted from them. And this was only the beginning. This was because Old Bull had already brought his powerful spirit beasts to kill their way over. In terms of strength, they weren't necessarily stronger than half-sages. But their mortal bodily defenses were extremely high and they were able to hold back the half-sages without any pressure. Go! A half-sage shouted out to the frightened disciples of the Demon Emperor's Gate. Kill! Kill! The disciples regained their composure and released their demonic energy. Then, they rushed towards Li Qingyang and the others. At present, Wusheng and the half-step Wusheng sects were evenly matched. But, in terms of the number of disciples, the Demon Emperor's Gate had a clear advantage. This was because they had 2,000 to 3,000 disciples. In contrast, the sect of all times only had a dozen or so core disciples. It wasn't the number that mattered, but the quality. Li Qingyang and the others each had a 6-piece divine armor set. They really weren't afraid of several thousand demonic cultivators. Not to mention, although there were many of them, they weren't all at the yellow level like on the battlefield. Hoo. The first to rush over were the Emperor-level powerhouses of the Demon Emperor's Gate. They displayed their spiritual power-type demonic skills. Black energy filled the sky and came crashing down from all directions. Facing so much energy, Li Qingyang and the others remained unmoved. This was because Xiao Ziji had already stepped forward. He spread out his hands and shouted, "Shield erect!" Hoo. The earth element spread out from his arms and instantly merged with the earth. The earth cracked rapidly. For shield-like defensive walls appeared and enveloped all his fellow disciples. Boom! 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 All kinds of energy blasted on the shield walls. Although there were many of them and their power was extraordinary, they couldn't move the walls at all. Shwa! Shwa! As soon as the attack was over, Li Fei used his movement technique and flew out of the defensive area. Wherever he passed, rays of light burst out, like a rubber ball, dragging streams of light as they blasted in different directions. Boom! Boom! The martial artists of the Demon Emperor's Gate couldn't dodge in time. They suffered the bombardment of energy with all kinds of aptitudes and staggered to the ground. Die! Suddenly, a cold voice came from the sky. Yi Xingqian had already rushed over. He unsheathed his true yang sword and flashed with sharp light. Retreat, retreat, retreat! Whoosh! 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 The 6 emperors of the Demon Emperor's Gate didn't have time to retreat. The cold and sharp sword chi came to disturb them. Their bodies froze on the spot, and fine sword marks appeared on their necks. Finally, they fell to the ground with their minds destroyed. In terms of killing people, if one couldn't kill them in one strike, practicing martial arts would be meaningless to Yi Anyo. Too scary. They are not human. They are demons. Fighting with such monsters, I might as well kill myself. I'm too trashy. I shouldn't live in this world. Plop. Plop. The dozens of demonic sect disciples who were standing in the front row suddenly knelt down and cried out in despair. They even thought that living for one more second was an insult to the air. Shwa! He Woody flew over and hovered above these martial artists who had lost confidence in life. He raised 2 fingers and said, "Then go to hell." Whoosh! Whoosh! The 7 mysterious sunglow was used. The red and orange lights instantly pierced through the air and pierced through the chests of more than 20 demonic cultivators. After killing the target, Li Fei, who was squatting on a tree far away, looked at the disciples of the Demon Emperor's Gate in another direction. He put his index and middle fingers together and placed them on his temples. His eyes focused, and an invisible force of depression spread out in an instant. Many of the martial artists whose cultivation levels were below Wuzong and Martial King lost their ability to fight. Then, they knelt on the ground and cried while holding their heads. "Father, Mother, you were wrong to give birth to me. My existence in such a beautiful world is an unforgivable stain." Shwa! Shwa! He Wudi and Yixingchen flew over. After the two main damage dealers assisted in controlling the target, they killed the demon cultivators effortlessly. Hiss hiss hiss. Li Qingyang also rushed over. Lightning wrapped around the True Yang's sword, and the power of the sword increased greatly. Perhaps they also knew that the Demon Emperor's gate had too many people and it was not suitable for a long battle. Therefore, the core disciples of the sect of all times who had special constitutions were not stingy. They only wanted to end the battle quickly. You're tuning into the Passion Page's YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.